I'm here at Knebworth House in Hertfordshire, and wow, what an extraordinary Victorian Gothic building. 19 generations of the Lytton family have lived here, and the current custodian is an American just like me, so I cannot wait to find out what it's been like for her to live in such a magnificent historic house. When I married into the British Aristocracy, it was the start of a wonderfully exciting journey. But for an American girl from a small town outside Chicago, that was also a little daunting. I live with my husband Luke, the Earl of Sandwich, and our family at Mapperton House in Dorset. Living in a place like this is a joy, but also a challenge. And every day we're aware that we're preserving a very special part of Britain's heritage. Mapperton has opened up an extraordinary new world for me, and I can't wait to share it with you all. So if you love castles and manors and stately homes as much as I do, please join this American Countess as I journey into the British countryside in search of some of Britain's finest historic houses. Knebworth House exudes romance, mystery, and intrigue with its turrets, domes, and gargoyles. The 19th century Gothic facade shields layers of architectural secrets dating back to the Tudor era. Knebworth is home to Henry and Martha Lytton-Kobold and their family. And I'm meeting Martha, also an American, who has embraced living here surrounded by British heritage, and is doing all she can to preserve Knebworth for future generations.
Hi, Julie.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Very nice to see you. And to hear that American accent, it is nice, I have to say.
Absolutely. It's lovely to have another one here. Always a pleasure.
Wow.
We headed out into the courtyard so I could hear more about this amazing building.
The house is quite exceptional. The Domesday Book tells me there was a building here in 1085, but this building,
yes,
we believe was here in 1490. And it was altered by Sir Robert Lytton when he acquired the house. But it was then fortified and enhanced, and we know that he started that work around 1500. He finished around 1586.
Okay.
But it was a four-sided building that went all the way around this courtyard with an open courtyard here.
But can I then ask what happened to the other three sides?
Absolutely, absolutely. So you can still see a window here, and whenever we do restoration work, we try to leave a window so you can see back to what the origins of the building were. This is the red brick Tudor building, which actually still exists in this quarter of what's remaining of Knebworth House. So the house remained largely the way Sir Robert and Roland Lytton left it in the 1500s until about 1811. You know, it was a time where the houses were just too big to manage. The estates were struggling. This was when Victorian grain was being imported.
Yes.
And the house was inherited by a young widow, Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton, in 1811.
Okay.
It was too big for her. It was not manageable.
No.
She took three sides down and building some towers onto it. It didn't have the tops at this point.
Oh my gosh.
But just a few towers and the lime render to make it look a little fresher. Her son in 1843 inherited.
Right.
And he's the one that put the copper domes and all the heraldic Gothic decoration with bats and with gargoyles. So you've got all of this high Gothic Victoriana, very fashionable of its time, which was recreated on our house.
Right.
And it is very, very unique.
Yeah.
There aren't many houses like this in England.
I mean, when I walked through the gates, I was like, oh my goodness. Even during that period when that Victorian Gothic sort of revival came up, it was that period you still wanted to show off.
Of course.
Yeah.
And we go back to Robert Lytton. He needed an important house when he was working with King Henry VII. It's always been the case.
Yeah.
Now, in 1880, we had Robert Lytton, Edward's son, who
Okay.
then made further Victorian embellishments, and he built the water tower and the watchtower. And the water tower was housing the water for the entire estate, not just the house. What's quite interesting is my father-in-law reconnected it in 1970, and we used it right up until 2014.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness,
Yeah.
that's
And at that point,
extraordinary.
we were able to connect on to the mains throughout. And,
Throughout, yeah.
You know, but it was amazing.
Brilliant. Well, should we head inside?
Let's pop inside.
Whew. Gosh, it's
On a lovely brisk spring day.
it's England. Music, literature, politics, all feature in the history of Knebworth. From the record-breaking rock concerts held in the park, to royal visits, to the literary genius of members of the Lytton family, each generation has contributed to its rich tapestry of history.
So this banqueting hall is just so majestic and so wonderful. And this is part of the original Tudor house. The property was acquired in 1490 by Robert Lytton. Because of his work, he was able to purchase this property and to alter the structure.
Right.
Robert will have taken oak beams from the estate to create this extraordinary ceiling.
In one sense, you almost look to him as kind of like the founding father
Absolutely.
of Knebworth.
Certainly the founding Lytton father.
Right.
And it's the Lytton family who have been here for over 500 years. It has passed through the female line a few times.
Yeah.
And the name Lytton keeps getting pulled back in.
Right, right.
But he is our founding father.
How wonderful.
As you were saying earlier, it was a time for showing off and showing prestige and showing, you know, here we are on the top of the hill in the great county of Hertfordshire. We did have Queen Elizabeth come, the first come to
Did you?
visit. We did. And in fact, we've had Queen Elizabeth II come to visit too. But you know, that is what these houses are for.
Yes.
Many generations later, Edward Bulwer-Lytton and Charles Dickens used to perform in this room. The acoustics are really very good. I won't sing for you.
You can if you want to, Martha.
We've had some extraordinary people come in and sing, and the acoustics are fantastic. The Minstrels Gallery up here can
I was
be
about
used.
to say, this is just brilliant
We've
there.
reenacted Christmas Carol theatrical readings here in front of the fireplace, and we've had local community choir groups come in and perform. And Edward Bulwer-Lytton's welcoming poem, "Read the reed of this old roof tree, here be trust safe, opinion free. Knightly right hand, Christian knee, worth in all, wit in some, laughter open, slander dumb. Hearth where rooted friendships grow, safe as altar even to foe. Home where chivalry and grace cradle a high-hearted race. If thy sap in these may be, fear no winter, old roof tree." So you can come and speak your mind. All are welcome.
It's wonderful.
You get visitors who come because of the tourism link with filming, or the tourism link with history and heritage, or the literature connection, or the women, or there's all sorts of things.
It's like what you said, Martha, it broadens your market because we're always looking to widen sort of the net in order to bring more people in.
But it is first and foremost a family home.
Yeah.
And that is part of what our visitors really enjoy seeing and experiencing. This is our family home. So we come from the Jacobean banqueting hall into the white dining parlour.
Yes,
And
light,
this-
bright.
It is now, but it didn't used to be. It had a much heavier Victorian look about it, with very heavy wall coverings and paintings and ceiling paintings. But at the time, that was considered very heavy and very dated.
Yes.
You know, much of the furniture kept because the Victorians kept the curtains pulled. And you move from the white dining parlour into a Victorian library. And let me just shut the door behind you because it gives the illusion
I love
of being
these.
completely encapsulated by the library. But
Brilliant.
it is an amazingly beautiful and rich room. When Edward Bulwer-Lytton moved here with his mother, he was a young boy, and he had visited and experienced his grandfather's collection. His grandfather had a world-renowned library.
Right, of course.
They sold it, They couldn't afford to keep, there wasn't very much here
Right.
anyway when Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton moved here as a young widow. But they had to liquidate to raise the funds to simplify and modernize the house to make it a family home. And the library was sold. Her son Edward became a prolific writer. He wrote poetry, he wrote plays, and he wrote novels. And he more or less filled his own library.
Oh my goodness.
And this wall here are all of his novels.
I guess he must feel he brought the library back to life.
And what's interesting
he's
is
very protective
Robert,
of
his
it.
son, this is Robert, very handsome man above the
Yes.
fireplace. And Robert was a very accomplished man in his own right too. He loved writing. He wrote many poems under the name Owen Meredith, very popular in America. Many of
my
our
goodness,
ancestors would have had
yes.
Owen Meredith on their bookcases. But he was asked by his father to publish under that name because he didn't want the competition. So yes, he filled the library, and yes, he did many wonderful, wonderful things, but he was also a man of great pride.
Right. He had sort of claimed his fame
Yes.
and
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that...
He was the poet.
Yeah. He was the poet.
He was the poet. But
How
Robert
interesting.
wrote some beautiful things.
And did he marry and have children?
Yes,
Yeah,
he
did.
married Edith Villiers.
Okay.
And they had a very large family, 3 beautiful girls. Constance Lytton is a very famous suffragette.
And that's one of his
Yes.
daughters.
And Robert's son, Victor, is the Lytton line here.
Here. This is what's so wonderful. When the public comes to these historic houses, they get to see all of these generations that have lived here.
Yeah.
This is the stuff I want to see as a
Absolutely.
visitor.
And people love the family photographs. So this takes us through into the armory. And this is a particularly interesting area of the house because this is the exterior wall of the original Tudor house. And you can see the very traditional diamond brickwork there. And they would make the darker bricks by burning them and then use it as part of the decoration. And again, we wanted to leave a little window back into the history.
Goodness.
But when this was altered by an architect called Biagio Rebecca for Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton, they realized they didn't have a grand staircase to go upstairs. And so this was bumped out.
I see.
And you created this, this beautiful...
So she built this.
Yeah.
Did you discover that?
During restoration, and we're always doing restoration. There's always something that needs doing.
You've discovered
And
quite
one
a
of
lot
the
so far. I've only been in 3
Absolutely.
rooms.
Exactly. And what you know, it's always something that will get started, and sometimes for whatever reason it doesn't get finished. And we recently just finished the whole of the ceiling in the last year. Many of the wooden strats were failing. In fact, we got the whole tower scaffold, which you can imagine at this height up there. My colleague called me, which he loves doing, and say, guess what I found? And the strap was held on by 1 nail. And we have visitors coming in here. You just cannot imagine. And so that was immediately repaired, and these beautiful carvings were reinstated. It gave us the opportunity to do further restoration on the archways. The wooden paneling that we've got here, this is actually part of a film set.
Is it?
We were being filmed for Victoria and Abdul. This was meant to be Balmoral. And the most amazing craftsmen came in because the film crews just have extraordinary teams.
Yep, and budgets.
And built this paneling to match our paneling. And we decided after they left that we wanted to keep 2 bits of it.
Yep.
And so you find that pieces will get added on to.
Yes.
It's important that it is living, and part of this comes to it. And we tell our visitors, that's a film prop.
That's right. And that's the story being added on. It doesn't just stop.
It's not static.
With Victor, presumably.
It's not an aspect.
Right.
And you know, that's the joy of a private, independent, family lived-in home. We're always moving things.
Yep.
My archivist said, stop hanging pictures. I'm like, well, you know, that's
But
part
it's
of
fun.
it.
It's fun.
And when we put the paneling in, we had to take all the armor out. We had to
Right.
remove the paintings. But it gave us an opportunity because I told you the house came through Henry's grandmother. That's Hermione here. We decided to rehang the portraits to tell the story of that succession. So Victor Lytton, her father, was the heir and the owner of the estate.
Yes.
She never expected to take on the estate. She had 2 brothers. She sadly lost both of them, and the house came to her, but the title went to Neville, Victor's brother. All 3 of these portraits were painted by Neville. He was an amazing artist.
Incredible.
They're all painted by Neville, and so it's wonderful to have his work here, but also the family history.
all the heraldry here. Incredible. These stained glass.
All of this was put in by Edward Bulwer-Lytton. And again, he was fascinated with the family heraldry and the quartering of the family coats of arms and crests. And he wanted very much to remember and honor his mum. Yeah. So that's when so much of this came in. And it is magnificent.
When Edward Bulwer-Lytton inherited Knebworth from his mother Elizabeth in 1843, he commissioned the architect John Crace to redesign the Long Gallery and to reflect his mother's ancestry.
What's really cool about this room is that it didn't have any heating or radiators until Henry and I put some in, which was about 15 years ago. It was very cold. It faces north. It was not hospitable, and so it kind of got left and forgotten. If it had been altered, like all the other rooms, I probably wouldn't have this Crace chandelier. I mean, how magnificent is that?
It's so
and this extraordinary design of the fireplace with suspended ostrich eggs.
Oh my goodness!
You know, incredible artistry and craftsmanship. So we're quite pleased that it wasn't the fashionable room, and it was an area where things were stored. But it is also an area that has a lot of restoration constantly needing. And I've recently just finished this wall. When you look over here, you can see this was the state of it.
Oh my gosh, yes you can, Martha.
This is water ingress.
No.
And every time we've had the money to do something to the structure of the building, we've never had the budget to work on the interior decoration.
Right.
And it's only recently, because we've had some success with our film location work, with the Crown filming here, or The Gentleman, which is out at the minute. What I've started doing is taking a very small percentage, like 5% of our filming revenue, so that I've got a tiny little budget and that I can actually do some work on some of the interiors. And that's how we've worked on the wallpaper. It's how we've stabilized these pelmets. These are the original pelmets. And they were in shreds. All of the tassels and the trim were hanging off. And again, I've managed to find someone with a bit of skill to help. Well, I've got peeling bits over here as well. Where I can, we try to do a few bits, but you know, there's always pieces that are falling off. And
just
this room would have been 2.5 times longer in the original house. And this is where the ladies would have exercised out of the sunlight.
So this was the Long Gallery.
Indeed, over a colonnade originally. And what we now find, Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton decided to make this very ornate. She had a fight with the vicar. And if you look out the window, you can see the 12th century church, much older than the house. He had a great presence in this area, but so did Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton, because she was running the estate. He and she fought over the tithe, the traditional tithe, which would normally have been 10% of all of the estate's drawings. And she felt it was a little bit unfair when she was growing pineapples in her greenhouse.
As you do.
Her treasured pineapples. And he wanted his share. And she said, enough is enough. And so she stopped attending his services. She started conducting services in this room. And everyone who worked for her, which was essentially the whole village and parish, needed to attend services here. So she left it that he was preaching to an empty church.
Oh my goodness.
This is interesting. My family, I don't know if you knew this, but my family come from a newspaper publishing background. My grandfather, my father had a wonderful series of newspapers, over 80 newspapers still today in America, which my half-sister Catherine is running. But this painting is of a printing press. Now, the printing press manuals in America, until very recently, had this very image on them.
No,
isn't that crazy?
That's incredible.
You get these weird little connections that often happen.
Oh my gosh!
And you know, it just blows your mind when you get these wonderful little nuggets.
But this is a wonderful room because it's so ornate, but also precious, and you must be obviously incredibly careful. It's fragile.
It is.
Do you use it so often though?
It's a really good question. The house has to work hard for itself.
Yeah.
The room is used a lot.
Yeah.
And obviously it's used for our day visitors. And my mother-in-law always said she wanted it to be her bedroom. It would be a magnificent bedroom. But there isn't any plumbing up here.
Yeah, I don't think I could have it as a bedroom.
And remember, there weren't even radiators until quite recently.
Yeah. How extraordinary.
And beautiful views of the park.
Just beautiful.
Yeah, it did incredible. So this brings you into the red passage, and this is where more of the formal bedrooms are. Pop in here, this is our Chinese bedroom. So many stately homes, it's traditional to have a Chinese bedroom. This is great fun.
Oh, wow.
And you have to get in this bed. So this would have been a bridal bed. And it flat packs, and it would travel with the bride and groom.
You're kidding me.
I'm completely serious.
So then,
but it's not very romantic, because I think you would have had an attendant sat there.
Who brought this into the family?
This was brought in by my parents-in-law. There was an old Chippendale bed in here, which was terribly uncomfortable, I gather, and one can't have an uncomfortable piece of furniture. And this is, of course, very comfortable and not creaky or rickety in any way.
No, it's super comfortable.
But this was put in to populate this wonderful Chinese room. Now, this is hand-painted Chinese wallpaper.
You're kidding me.
This is rather fun. We know that Charles Dickens stayed in this room. We believe that this inspired him when writing David Copperfield, and they were trying to come up with Jip's house. This was the design, so that when the dog went into his house and the little bells rang, it created a little bit of uncertainty for Jip.
Right.
Yes. But you can guess what it actually is.
Well, it's a pagoda.
No, but what would they have put in it?
Oh, the ashes.
The potty.
The potty. I'm thinking, I'm terribly wrong with that. Look at it.
It's a decorative potty holder.
It's a decorative potty holder. Here I was thinking that it was going to be some type of urn that went in there.
No, I'm
with
afraid
ashes.
it's really quite basic.
All right. So who put this room together? Because it's quite exquisite.
Well, it's been a multi-generational effort.
Right.
You know, the wallpaper would have gone in 150 years ago, and then it would have been adjusted and evolved
and added
over
on
time, including my parents-in-law.
Could be my favorite room so far.
The Hampden room, this one we designed as a nursery, because the nursery was upstairs, but when my parents-in-law opened the house on a regular basis in the 70s, and remember, they took it on at a time where it was deemed a lost cause.
Of course.
And my grandmother-in-law had tried to gift it to the nation, to the National Trust. We didn't have enough endowment, and they said no. She then tried to look for alternative uses. It was at one point to become the University of Hertfordshire. And there are great plans of that, which we have in our archives, but it didn't. And David and Chrissy said, we'd like to give it a go. So they moved in, buckets everywhere.
Yep.
Chrissy hand making curtains in various rooms. And they brought many of the nursery items downstairs.
Okay.
And which is important for our visitors to see. But these are things that were used. This doll's house belonged to Hermione's aunt. She always said it was a ridiculous doll's house because there weren't any stairs and she couldn't quite understand how the dolls got up and down the stairs.
It's a fair point.
But it was hers.
Yes.
Her much loved Steiff bear. And the cradle, which my daughter Morwenna slept in when we first moved back for a visit. And more of the Tudor wall stenciling here. Whenever we can do it, we'll show a little window of what's behind the plaster. And you can see it even when on the timbers.
This is incredible. And you uncovered that?
We've uncovered that during our restoration process. This is fun too, Julie. Put your hand gently on the seat of that.
This one?
Yep. Just press on where it's raised and hold it down. How much fun as a child.
Oh my goodness.
And
this would have been my favorite chair.
Isn't it magnificent? My mother-in-law, we started concerts over 50 years ago, and my mother-in-law was taking Frank Zappa through the house, as you do.
Yes,
and
you do.
She played that, and he said, no wonder you Brits are so crazy. You've had music coming out of your backsides from its infancy. But,
It's, okay, now this could be my favorite room.
Well,
just because there's so many sort of bits and bobs all telling a story, and that's what's wonderful.
This is Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton's room, and it is very much of a Regency style. I mean, to the point that you've got a door over here which goes nowhere. It's only there for balance and symmetry.
I see.
But that was important.
Yep.
She was an artist. She painted her dogs and she painted her horses, and was very involved in her country life. Now, we've tried very hard to keep it as best as we can. Very recently, the silks that we used, Chrissy used her wedding gown silk for recovering the chair and the stool at one point. and we've had to replace some of the silks over the years.
But that's very clever to think of that.
It's trying to, regenerate, recycle. But the room is as close as it can be. And it is a room that is used for filming. It's been used in The Crown. It's been used in all sorts of different productions. Wow. It is a room that is quite cold, and yet it's closer to our living part as well. Right. And what we find often with film crews is they do feel a little bit of a presence in this room.
Yeah.
We've had visitors who've slept in this room. I won't put you here, don't worry. Okay. But we've had visitors who've slept in this room, woken up, feeling like a pressure's on their chest and a pressure is on their neck.
Right.
And it's unexplained.
Maybe she doesn't like it so much that they're occupying her
It
room,
could
considering
be.
that saying is this room long occupied, and so on and so on.
Indeed.
Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton was a formidable presence at Knebworth. Her strong will was inherited by her great-granddaughter, Lady Constance Lytton, who made personal sacrifices for a greater cause. Jill Campbell, the archivist at Knebworth, explains more.
Hello. I'm Julie.
Hello, I'm Jill. Lovely to meet you.
So nice to meet you.
I'm the archivist here at Knebworth House.
I heard you have the job that I want one day. Can we just have a moment here? Is it just so much fun?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Can I ask you, Jill, before we get into what we're just about to cover, but being the archivist here at Knebworth, are there just thousands of letters, journals, diaries?
Yeah. Yes, there are, yeah. And they're not all catalogued yet, so
Right.
we're still working our way through them.
And what would you say is the most interesting thing you've found so far?
I don't think I can choose one. It's all interesting, yeah. But this collection we're going to look at is very interesting.
Right.
It's our suffrage connection, and it's relating to Lady Constance Lytton, who is the great-granddaughter of Mrs. Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton.
Right. I saw her bedroom.
That's
There we
right,
go. It's
yeah.
very well preserved.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
so this is her great-granddaughter.
So another strong woman in the
Very
family.
strong, a very strong woman. And she was actually, became involved in the fight for women's suffrage quite late on. She was 29
Okay.
when she became involved. And she joined the Women's Social and Political Union and became a suffragette in 1909.
Okay.
So quite late on in life to become involved.
See her sort of in some of these photos, just there walking. But that photo to me looks like she's in prison.
She is. She was in prison 4 times.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So her first imprisonment was only a month after she joined the suffragettes.
And was that just from protesting?
Yes, she went on a protest. She was arrested. She was sentenced to a month in Holloway prison. We're actually lucky enough in the archive to have this letter that Constance wrote to her brother Victor, the Earl of Lytton. And it's, as you can see, it's on Holloway notepaper. And it gives you all the rules that you have to follow to be able to write a letter in Holloway.
Oh my gosh. What?
And then you open it up and
she's
writes
written a
quick,
letter.
A quick letter, March 1909, to her brother. She's just letting him know that she's okay.
Right. This is wonderful. And actually, you can actually read her handwriting there.
And she's still you know, supporting the cause. She's asking him to do things for her that she can't do while she's inside.
Yes. Just reading this, it says, I am filled with things I wish to say. I can't make speeches, but the breakfasts are delightfully informal, whereas you can explain how I hate the formalities and respectabilities of evening feasts. I certainly could not say a word at one of these. It would all seem unsympathetic to me, official, odious. It looks like there because everything there was more informal, she was able to speak her mind.
Yeah, and she's
as a woman compared to
planning ahead for her release.
Yes.
Because once she's released, this is her first imprisonment. Everybody will want to know what happened. How did she get on? However, it didn't go as planned. She felt that she was being treated kinder than other prisoners because of who she was, because she was Lady Constance Lytton. Her brother was Victor, the Earl of Lytton, who was a politician, and she felt that she was getting privileged treatment compared to others. What I should have said was Constance has always had a bit of a weak heart from being a child, so she didn't keep the best health. When she went into the prison, she was given a medical test by doctors, and they picked up her heart. And unfortunately, once again, because of who she was given special treatment, she felt. And she was actually released early because of her weak heart.
Oh my goodness.
The dedication of Lady Constance to the suffragette movement became ever more steadfast, even concealing her own identity.
She takes herself off to Manchester. She goes to local shops. She dresses herself as a working seamstress.
Yes.
And she calls herself Jane Wharton. She cuts her hair short.
She wears glasses.
She's got a little pince-nez on her nose, and she gets arrested as Jane Wharton. She also secretly rejoined the WSPU as Jane Wharton. So they didn't know, no one knew. She did this all on her own. Gets arrested.
As Jane Wharton.
As Jane Wharton. This time, she isn't given a medical, presumably because she's just Jane Wharton, not Lady Constance Lytton.
I see.
So she doesn't get any privileged treatment this time.
So she's happy about this.
She's happy about this, yes, she is. But she decides to go on hunger strike.
And many of them did that, didn't they, the suffragettes?
Yeah, it was quite a new thing at the time.
Right.
She didn't eat for 4 days, and then they decided to start force feeding her, which is a particularly nasty, horrible treatment.
Awful.
And what happens in the end is that the press hear the rumours that Lady Constance Lytton is in prison in disguise, and they contact her sister Emily Lutyens, who from the description says, yes, that's my sister. And Emily goes and they release her. She probably would have wanted to stay, but I think she was so ill by then, after 8 lots of force feeding.
And also with a weak heart, as you mentioned,
Yeah, so it took her quite a long time to recover after that. This is from Mrs. Emmeline Pethick Lawrence.
Okay.
And it's to Con's brother, Victor. And this is written regarding the Jane Wharton imprisonment.
Okay, where nobody knew who she was.
No one knew. She did it all on her own.
Yes.
And this is the union, the WSPU, writing to Victor and saying that they knew nothing of this. They didn't force her to do this. She did it by herself. She didn't tell them. And it's quite nice because they're also saying that they can sympathise with the family and how distressing it must have been for them.
So it says, the action of your sister, Lady Constance Lytton, has moved us all profoundly.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And it says that there's a admiration we feel for the family. Can I turn this?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you. We are very, very sorry for this. And we too feel intensely with personal grief. But with it are other strong emotions of unthinkable reverence for this heroic woman and true saint.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So that's a really nice letter for the family to receive.
Lady Constance continued to work for the suffragette movement and was arrested a 4th time, but it took its toll and she never fully regained her health. After suffering a stroke, determined to record her experiences, she wrote a book.
Prisons and Prisoners, Some Personal Experiences by Constance Lytton and Jane Wharton, spinster.
Yes.
I love that.
And this
Gosh.
copy actually she gave to her mother, Edith.
Okay.
And it's got a lovely dedication there to...
Oh, for my darling mother, from her devoted Con. Oh, they call her Con.
Con, yeah. Everyone calls her Con. But as this was Edith's copy, she's written in the copy this, if you want to read that.
Yes. I mean, here we go. A human document, touchingly and beautifully written, and helps one to forgive her for following the leaders of such a movement in spite of the acute pain of the whole thing. So who writes that?
This is Edith, so
this
Con's
is
mum.
Con's
So
mum
yeah,
writes
she's
this.
written it in her copy, and she's had it pasted in
Right.
to the book, which is
Oh,
really
that
lovely
is
thing to
lovely.
have. Yeah.
But it's amazing what these women did because, of course, because of them, then there was that act that was passed by Parliament
Yeah.
for women to vote. Is that right?
So
Was she alive?
She was,
to
yeah.
see
she
that
was,
happen.
She was alive to see the 1918
Right.
Act go through, which she was very pleased about.
And remind me, the 1918 Act, what were the parameters around that?
That gave women over the age of 30 the vote.
Okay.
And they had to have certain property qualifications,
Okay.
be householders. But it still didn't give them completely equal rights to men.
No.
That didn't happen until 1928, and sadly Con died in 1923.
Okay.
But she saw the first results.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. How incredible. It's just so empowering, I think, for women in particular to be able, and you as the archivist here, for you to be able to research this and in one sense be able to see what she experienced so that we could have that right to vote.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. See, that's why I want your job. Because it's so interesting. It's so interesting. Well, gosh, thank you, Jill, so much. This is wonderful to see this, to be able to look at this book, but also just to hear you tell the story of Con.
Thank you.
I always
enjoyed
refer to her
telling
as
it.
Con now.
Yeah. Well,
brilliant.
she was always called Con by the family, so
Yeah, it's brilliant. Thank you.
thank you.
Lady Constance Lytton died at the age of only 54, but her legacy lives on. She is buried in the mausoleum in the park at Knebworth, with this epitaph inscribed in stone. Endowed with a celestial sense of humor, boundless sympathy, and rare musical talent, she devoted the later years of her life to the political enfranchisement of women and sacrificed her health and talents in helping to bring victory to the cause. Knebworth House was transformed in the 19th century, from its red brick Tudor origins to the Victorian Gothic masterpiece we see today. The drama and flamboyance of Knebworth's architecture has become synonymous with the record-breaking live music events held here since the 1970s. At Knebworth, each generation makes its mark, and Martha leads me to a room where Knebworth's rock history meets royal history.
So here we are in the Queen Elizabeth room. Now what's interesting about this room is, it's called the Queen Elizabeth room. Edward Bulwer-Lytton wanted to recreate the room as it would have been when Queen Elizabeth I came to visit.
I see.
Now he painted on the fireplace there 1588 because he assumed that she came during the Spanish Armada. But through our research and looking beyond in the National Archives, we know that she came earlier than that. We think it was 1566, 1568, come for dinner, but then came to stay for 4 days in 1571. So Edward Bulwer-Lytton wanted to recreate that feel.
So that's what he did.
Indeed.
And also the ceiling.
The ceiling is magnificent.
Yeah.
And the ceiling is relatively new. I say relatively new, but this was added, and it has Robert Lytton's insignia up there as well.
Right.
So this would have been added post Edward Bulwer-Lytton.
Okay, so
The oldest part of the room is actually this stool. This is a Tudor stool.
Okay.
And that would have been very common.
right.
And that is of the period. But this room, we use it all the time. It's a principal guest room. We've had all sorts of interesting people to stay. Mick Jagger slept in that bed.
I
You
mean,
know,
we
in
are.
1976 when they were playing in
That's right.
you know, the park just around.
This is the rock and roll
Yeah,
historic house,
absolutely,
obviously.
absolutely. But
Oh
being
my
a
goodness.
family home, when my mother-in-law was stripping the bed after he'd left, she actually found a little, and they are little, pair of knickers. So of course, what does she do? She puts them in an envelope, sticks them in the safe. My husband has framed them. They're on the wall in there.
No.
Well, what else are we going to do with
That's
them?
brilliant.
You know, you've got a 4-poster bed, so why not have a 4-poster bath? Wonderful to have this working with the room, but of course when we had Oasis in '96 and they were staying in a caravan, we had a call from the promoter asking if Liam could come up and have a bath. So of course he can have a bath.
absolutely.
So we, you know, shut the door from the house guests, let them in to use the bath. My father-in-law comes up to bring him a bottle of champagne, as you do, the rock star in the tub, who has to perform again that night. And later in the documentary, Liam is saying that a liveried footman brought him a bottle of champagne. Of course, it was my father-in-law, Lord Cobbold.
That's brilliant.
But a great welcome. But come through
That
and
is
have a
brilliant.
look at our most famous pants in the house.
I cannot believe this.
Because what else are we going to do but keep them?
And
Frame
frame them. Oh my gosh. Do you know, I saw the Rolling Stones in concert, so this means even
You know,
more to me.
a bright red pair of vintage 70s pants
I mean, they're
from
fantastic.
the Stones in 76.
But
yeah.
they're itty bitty.
Well, you know,
I mean,
he's a petite
he
performer.
He is a petite performer. How brilliant and lovely that it really is works well with the wallpaper.
it matches. A gothic red.
How fun.
Rock concerts, events, and filming opportunities all help generate funds to restore and repair the house. I sat down with Martha to hear more about how she juggles managing a house the scale of Knebworth and being president of historic houses.
So this is the picture gallery. It's also referred to as the Long Gallery, and this is our drawing rooms. We've had The Crown filmed here, and Queen Mary, not the real one, was sat in here listening to the King's speech.
How fun.
But it's still a family home.
Yes.
It's still our family drawing room. Would you like some tea?
Oh, yes, please. Thank you. Now, I have, of course, so many burning questions for you because it's wonderful, can I just say, coming to visit a historic house, not just because it's Knebworth, but because it's Knebworth and one of the custodians is an American. But I have heard every now and again, Martha, a y'all.
Absolutely.
So remind me what state you are from.
I was born in Suffolk, Virginia, and I grew up in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So you know,
South.
a lot of the South, a lot of
Right.
Southern influence
Yeah.
there. And Tuscaloosa is where the University of Alabama is based, and so actually quite a cosmopolitan Southern town. And my mom was fantastic at exposing me to art and antiques, and my parents very supportive of us traveling and
Right.
furthering our education.
How did you meet Henry? And here you are.
I know it's quite a tale. We met when we were children. My mother published a publication called Antiques Monthly and Horizon magazine for the performing arts, and she created a tour experience called the Delisle Grey Journeys with Bill Delisle, Viscount Delisle from Penshurst Place.
Right.
And at the time, they had the idea that she could pull together groups of Americans who were very interested in history, many looking back at their ancestry, but fascinated and wanting to support heritage here in England.
Yes.
So she would take a group to have dinner with Lord Delisle and his family at Penshurst, or they came here to Knebworth with my parents-in-law and many, many other houses.
Right.
But they got on incredibly well, made fast friends, realized they had sons of a similar age. My husband was actually born in Brooklyn, New York. His father was working in a bank in New York at the time. And so she thought it would be fun. My mother-in-law thought it would be fun for him to see a little bit of America. So
Right, because he was born there.
off
Yeah.
he was sent to Alabama, of all places.
Of all places.
Of all
it's
places.
Brilliant.
So my father taught him how to water ski, of course, on Lake Tuscaloosa. We took him up to Washington, D.C. and gave him a little dose of America so he could see it. And that's been a lifelong love. We've been married 37 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Incredible. So 37 years, but when did you take over the running and of Knebworth and becoming, when did that change, that shift happen for you that you and Henry
We always
were here?
knew that it was a responsibility. We always knew that we needed to come back and assist either Henry's parents or hand the baton over, accept it from them and carry on that tradition. Henry's father was quite keen for us to come back a little bit sooner than we did. But I was pregnant with Edward at the time in Los Angeles, so which is where we moved initially. We married and moved to Los Angeles because Henry was working as a screenwiter in California.
So did you get married here at
No,
Knebworth?
we got married in Alabama.
That is brilliant,
Yeah.
Martha. I mean,
Christ Episcopal Church, Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
it's so brilliant.
I know, it is fantastic,
So you
our family
knew,
church.
in one sense, you knew that you would end up here. So you moved here, and what year was that when you moved
We
to
moved back
Knebworth?
here in 93,
Okay.
and we swapped houses in 2000.
Okay.
And I started working with the estate in 93.
Right.
Initially in our catering and our sales and marketing and helping in a different way.
Just learning
And
the ropes, really.
Exactly.
By the time Martha and her family moved into the house, Knebworth was on the map as the home of classic rock concerts. This success had developed from the pressing need in the 1950s and beyond for historic houses to diversify and open their doors to the public to survive.
It was a very tricky time. Often it was that the taxation, death duties, we had a series of 3 death duties in a row here.
Oh,
and that's
my
very
goodness.
crippling.
Yeah.
And much of Knebworth Estate was taken over for the development of the new town of Stevenage. And I'm delighted to be part of Stevenage.
Right.
But that was 10,000 acres taken on compulsory purchase at agriculture rate.
Right.
So you have all these things that are happening which are making it less and less viable.
Right.
So
Of course.
it was imperative, I think, that many owners started to share best practice and experiences in trying to find a way forward.
Yes.
And that was created through a committee, initially through the British Tourist Authority, but ultimately became the Historic Houses Association.
Yes.
And my father-in-law was one of the founding members of the Historic House Association. So it's quite, you can see where they shared information on opening as a safari park or opening for filming or opening for day visitors.
Or a
And
motor museum, Bewley.
exactly. Bewley and the Motor Museum are amazing, what they've done there, and the safari park at Longleat,
Yep.
and you look at Goodwood. But these were all integral members to that infancy
Yes.
of the Historic House Association. And they very much were inspired by that, but they also learnt from each other.
Yes.
They learnt from each other about best practice, but also the pitfalls.
Because this was new.
Yeah. And everybody was
houses-
hands-on. We're still hands-on. But my
yes,
mother-in-law
we are.
was literally dressed as a wench serving in this very room a banquet to paying customers.
Right.
And made all the costumes as well. And cooked all of the food. And that's the sort of hands-on level that they did and that you had to do.
You had to. And so were your in-laws thinking, we're part of this small group to begin with that's creating this organization, which we'll get onto in a second, called Historic Houses, at that time, Historic Houses Association, but we need to do something different. And is that where the idea of the concerts came to be?
The concerts are it's a great story, that, because we're celebrating 50 years of hosting music here at Knebworth this year.
So that's 1974.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they received a letter from an event organizer, shall I call him, and they honestly thought it was a Renaissance fair. It was actually the Bucolic Frolic. We actually had some great American acts on it. The Allman Brothers, the Doobie Brothers.
gosh,
I know, the Doobie
love
Brothers.
them.
That was my first album I ever bought. And it's incredible that that's what it evolved to. But they were open-minded and they were free-spirited people,
Right.
and they were willing to give it a go, and they had fun with it.
Yes.
They enjoyed hosting the acts. We needed to turn it into a little bit more of a commercial business.
Yes.
When Henry and I took it over. But it wouldn't be here without them. They came up with ways to facilitate, to make it happen. And we're we're just taking it that step further.
That leads me to historic houses.
this wonderful association where your father-in-law was really one of the founding fathers. And you now, Martha, are the president. You're the first woman president and the first American president.
Indeed.
And this is let's think about it. This is a British organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that in itself is a little bit daunting, but my goodness, what an honor and a privilege.
I want to talk to you just a little bit about also historic houses, the association, that it's very different from, and me as the American, I had to learn this quite quickly, very different from National Trust or English Heritage.
Indeed. So there are a lot of differences, and when one looks back at the National Trust and English Heritage, they are phenomenal in what they do, and in many cases they are the ones that sort of drew the line in the sand of which we all lead up to learn from. We still use the National Trust book on housekeeping and how to do restoration and various things on chattels today. But the National Trust and English Heritage are government owned and government controlled, and they have many different aspects and opportunities than we do. As an example, they don't pay business rates.
Right.
They don't have inheritance taxation. We're there to support independent heritage properties. That is houses, gardens, and parks. We're there to support the properties, support the members, to ensure they have the information that they need to run their homes and their businesses, because it can be a little bit isolating when you take on a property like this. You know, you're coming in from a different industry, most likely.
Yes.
And while it may have been your family home, most of us have to go out and earn a living elsewhere before it's your turn to take it on. And so it can be a bit of a weird situation. And we offer that non-judgmental environment. So whether in today's world you log on to the forum site and you can ask a question about where do you find a Victorian bathtub plug, or how do you clear a hopper head that's integral to two different roof structures and lines. But someone will have done it before.
Yes, exactly.
And we're all happy and willing to share that information. We're all so supportive, as my father-in-law found, in trying out these ideas and learning from one another. So we can be very supportive, very nurturing as co-owners, but as an association we can streamline the government guidelines to support any planning initiatives, to help them along their way, to ensure that there is a great forum of networking, both with other members but within government, and to make sure that their voices are heard. And with our visitor members, it's engaging with them. It's making sure that they understand and feel a part of what we're doing to protect the nation's heritage. It can happen many different ways. We have a wonderful magazine that comes out quarterly, both for our house members and our visitor members.
Yes. Right, because you can, of course, become a visitor member.
You can.
And you've got access to over
300 houses, gardens, and
houses
parks.
and gardens. But if I'm sitting here watching this and I'm thinking, well, I can't possibly get to the UK for various reasons, but I do want to support historic houses and become, let's say, an international member.
Absolutely.
It's still vitally important.
It is.
And there's lots of benefits.
And the magazine's also available digitally. So it's everything can be accessed from afar or once here as well. And one can visit when they're here, but also engage from afar and have this little door open.
Yes. There's online lectures, there's online workshops. You can hear from different homeowners, the restoration projects that they're doing or what they're undertaking.
And you can engage with them directly as well. It acts as a portal.
Yes.
So it just opens up many, many doors, 1,500 in fact. Work, an amazing resource and such a support.
Yeah.
And also an honor and a privilege to help work and fight for the causes that we're all representing.
That's right.
It's a wonderful circle of support.
Yeah.
Support, engagement, enthusiasm, and love of heritage.
And
a lot of fun too.
Yeah, and a couple Americans too.
A few Americans scattered in there for good measure.
Spending time with Martha, and like every historic home across the UK, it's clear Knebworth is a house in need of constant repair and attention. And Martha's enthusiasm and delight in preserving this building for the future is inspiring.
The tapestries are so magnificent, and this is a 17th century Flemish tapestry. It's a wonderful heirloom to have, and my grandmother-in-law took it with her to retire at a lake house which was built for her when my parents-in-law moved in, and of course enjoyed it immensely there, and then it came back when she moved again. We have it, you know, secured in a way that it is safe for it to be enjoyed.
Yes.
But what you find is the weight of it. You can see as it pulls down, we've got some little stress marks. And so it does need constant assessment. You have to watch for moth damage.
Yeah.
You've got to watch for light discoloration. And the responsibility is just, you know, it is never ending, but it's too beautiful not to have enjoyed for everyone to be able to look at it.
The main project for me at Mapperton is we have some fantastic 18th century tapestries as well from Belgium. They are in dire need of restoration. You know, the end of one has been bitten by one of the dogs from the past.
A lot of the colorings that were used came from natural products. Sometimes they're even insect blood. All sorts of different natural products were used. And of course, in a modern world, even then I expect, but the moths are attracted to it. And once you start getting light damage, it's trying to find out how far do you go to stabilize it?
Yes.
How far are you going to restore it? Because actually you're not wanting to recreate it.
No.
You're wanting to maintain it and hold it.
Exactly.
Because this is the reality. Things are, you know, they are changing, they're decomposing, they're beginning to deteriorate. So you have to look and notice. And I keep looking at the crack above it as well. And, you know, you just notice these things when you can.
Yeah.
And then try to figure out what's going on behind it and fix it as best you can or hold it.
And exactly. And also with these historic houses, and they are, many of them, they are quite vast. And even though 3/4 have been pulled down, it's still big. And you can't see every single crack or leak or...
And often you lift that lid of that project and you realize it's not just a crack. There's death watch beetle, there's dry rot, there's watering grass. There could be any number of things going on. So it is important. We have to be proactive. We have to just jump in there.
And it's not just the interiors at Knebworth which have undergone major restoration projects. Outside, in the blustery spring sunshine, we explore the Victorian fantasy world which adorns the building.
I have to say, I don't think I've seen so many gargoyles on a building in my life.
Gargoyles, griffins, dogs, you know, all sorts of beasts, because they would, you know, a lot of them were fantastical beasts.
Right.
This is why, you know, when Harry Potter came here to do a product launch with us, that we fit the bill, and we were just so honored to be the British launch of Harry Potter.
Of course.
You know, how cool is that?
So cool.
But you know, this end of the house was the first part that we did the restoration on in the 1980s. Unfortunately, this is also where we had damage recently, and this is the northwest corner, which we had to put 6 underpins, literally money in the ground.
Yep, that nobody can see.
Nope, because we had a Victorian turret literally twisting away from the Tudor structure. And my colleague went up into a cherry picker, and he could put his entire hand through the crack of the building to the inside of the building.
Oh my gosh.
The drain pipe was coming off, and it ricocheted all the way this way and around the corner through the library into our circular stairs. Come around. This is one of the more recent restorations, and we had to do this in 2020. So we managed to get a little job done after Liam Gallagher performed, but this was a monumental task, this corner.
Of course.
And frustrating because it was already restored.
Okay.
It was already restored, and the clay underneath, with climate change, has expanded and contracted. And the Victorian foundation had a differential from the Tudor.
Right.
So windows had to come out.
Oh my gosh, did they?
Absolutely.
So you had scaffolding all the way up,
all the way up,
yep.
And all the way around. And we've got the sort of new shape of Knebworth, as the architect had to explain to me when I said, can't that be a little bit straighter? And he's like, no, the building has moved. We can carry on with the render replacement and with that decorative design, but this is the new shape of Knebworth.
Oh my
So
goodness.
this all had to be rebuilt.
And you can see that it has.
In the windows, that they're not actually that symmetrical anymore, which is it's a shame. But I don't think they ever really were.
I'm just noticing, again, because there's so many gargoyles, griffins, but I'm noticing, are those bats? Like
those are bats on barrels.
Eating their tails?
Indeed, yes. It's quite a trick, isn't it?
Okay.
So that is a pun on the family name Lytton. With the bats on the barrels. Do you remember the flittermouse with the bat, and the ton is a barrel? And so these were Victorian. This was very ornate Gothic architecture that was on all the pier caps, but slightly concerned the Victorians with their purist views that it was maybe a little bit racy, and they let them decay on these ends. So we only have it there.
Okay.
And we've worked over here on the Central West, but we just have to do what we can do. And in replacing these carved beasts up here with their lanyards, their halberds.
Yes, exactly.
And they're facing west because that's keeping away the evil west. It's warning any evil that might be coming from the west to keep away. It's a guarded building.
And when was this done again?
The top bit, 2015.
Wow.
Yeah, I wanted to do these beautiful columns, carved columns. We were all the way around them, and there literally was not a penny to spare. We come in with the great love and passion to save, restore, maintain these buildings and keep them accessible.
I could just stay out here all day.
It's very deep, isn't it?
Especially now that the sun's out.
Yeah.
And just, you could just stare at one spot and you would be taken in.
Since the 1950s, an inconspicuous tower in the courtyard stood empty. In 2020, a major restoration program began to restore the building.
We believe that the design would have had the flooring in each level, but with a straight ladder, like a loft ladder going up that you would climb up, rather than this circular stair. But of course, this works better for a modern visitor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Including little passing points that one could bump into. But we've left all of the original features as best as we could. So we have the fireplaces on each level.
Why were there fireplaces here?
Because, of course, the watchmen, there's no heating in here. And the watchmen needed a place to sit, to stay warm. They were in here for long periods of time to make their tea and coffee.
Yes.
And make it just habitable, really.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, it's today I can see why you would need
absolutely.
a fireplace.
And all of this oak came from our estate. We found a tree in the woodland, we picked one out, cut it down and cut the timber to shape. That is reclaimed iron balustrades, which we made from the old estate fencing. A lot of estates in England you'll recognize, probably have some at Mapperton.
Yes, yes.
But it surrounds the fields and many areas of the woodland. Most is decomposed and collapsed. So we salvaged what we could and reused it.
So you've really upcycled
absolutely
so much here. It's amazing.
This entire house and estate has been built on upcycling, recycling, reusing. Bricks and slates and things were always reused.
Right,
so
yes.
It's not a new thing.
Yeah,
It's just a quick thing to do.
So, exactly.
And putting in windows in the wall slits, I don't think there would have been a window like this. And it does work, you can open it if you want to, and even shoot an arrow out of it. But do look and make sure you don't get a gardener first. But this is the design, and that's how they would peek through. And that's why you need a fire.
Is fantastic.
Yeah.
So you've kept the original arrow
Absolutely,
slits,
absolutely.
How clever.
Yeah.
That is so clever. So this was finished when?
We finished this in March 2020, which of course was right when the pandemic hit. And so opening up access to a new area, and then we were shut down by the pandemic and all of the legislation that followed through.
Yes.
So it was a very frustrating time for us. We couldn't have visitors in here for another 2 years.
Right.
So it was a real shame.
Yeah.
But it's here.
But it's here.
And it's open.
We all survived.
And you now can experience it. And you can now come and play Watchman.
It's brilliant. Okay, so how many more steps do we have to go?
Well, there's 55 in total, so I'd say you've got another 21 to do.
Okay.
So So here we are at the top of the Watchman's Tower.
Yes, I feel like I should say a quote right now. It was a dark and stormy night.
Indeed, indeed. Edward Bulwer-Lytton had good calls for coming up with that famous line.
He certainly did. Oh my
But this
goodness.
is spectacular, isn't it? Because this gives you the vantage point of the whole park.
Wonderful.
And one of the things we wanted to achieve was to give visitors this vantage point, this view, but to understand the heritage of the house going back to the Saxon times.
Yes.
So we created an app, the Watchman's app, which is a free app, anyone can download it. And it gives you the opportunity to look at the house, to look at the park and the church, and to learn about it. So you can look at the Norman times, the Saxon times, you can look at the Victorian times,
Right.
the modern times now, and you can see how the house has changed. We believe there was always been a structure here because it's written about in the Doomsday Book.
Okay.
And it would have been called Knebworth. So similar,
yes,
you know,
exactly.
similar to this. We think it was probably the camp of King Knebba,
Okay.
but
Right.
you know, it would have been a wooden structure of some type, and obviously none of that would have
Yes,
survived.
right.
But this would have been part of a village settlement. So on this app, which we created because we couldn't open, you can experience it and move around in virtual time and look at it in different time periods.
Right.
So very
Oh,
cool.
that is very cool. There's a ladder up on the roof, so
Indeed.
you're having works done
We're
up there.
always, you know, we started when my father-in-law moved into the house. He created a 10-phase program of restoration.
Wow.
And the first phase happened in the late 80s, 1990s. That was the northern end of the house.
Okay.
And we've been slowly moving our way around. This bit here, the 3 chimneys and the 2 turrets, were our most recent restoration, and that was completed after the 2022 concert with Liam Gallagher. But that's what it's about. You make the money, you sink it straight back in.
Yeah, but that's it. You bring the visitors in, you've got to put it
And
to
you
a
do
project.
as much as you
Yeah.
can.
The watchtower here, though, it was used
Yes.
to literally be
Yes.
a watchtower.
Yeah.
Is that right?
The last time we have a record of it being used was 1950, when my grandmother-in-law remembers as a child a little chit of paper, as she would call it,
Right.
being placed at her father's breakfast setting.
Yeah.
That was the watchman's report, and he would report on mainly wildlife. We didn't
Right.
have the marauding, you know, Danes coming down at that point, but it did happen at some point.
Yes,
but
it did. The marauders did
for
come.
Victor, it would have been deer, owls, munkjack, that sort of thing.
Yes, yes.
But you can see we've still got a lot to do. You know, the last estimation was about £14 million to complete the southern roofs, all the southern roofs, and the structural repairs that we have.
Yeah. And
So
that's what these
we've come a
historic
long
houses
way.
are. It's just never ending. But,
Never ending.
You know,
You do what you can.
You do what you can as the generation
Absolutely.
that is currently the custodian of the
Yeah.
house. You do what you can in the hopes that when you pass it on to the next, that it's in better shape than when you
And
took
my
it on.
ambition, I really hope in my tenure that I can get it off the Heritage at Risk list. We're still on the Historic England Heritage at
you?
Risk. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we are.
And
So
why is
it's
that? It's
because we have £14 million of structural
my
repairs still to do.
gosh.
It's a benefit in one element, in the fact that it is raising attention to the situation.
Yeah.
But at the other hand, it's quite
it's
an
still at risk,
obligation.
yeah.
And you know, I would love, that would be my ambition. I would
Yeah,
very
in
much
your
like to
tenure.
get it off before
Oh, gosh,
one of my
Martha, I
children
didn't
takes
know
it on.
that.
Yeah, indeed.
Wow.
So it's a constant battle,
Yeah.
and it's one that we've been working on for decades, well, for centuries.
I actually think that you'll be able to do it with your American spirit. Your
can-do
and
attitude,
the can-do, and
the don't give up.
and the don't give up, and the American work ethic. I mean,
Yeah.
we do need to kind of
Yeah.
pat ourselves on the back for that.
Yeah. Well,
we do.
it is a 24/7 job, but it is an honor and a privilege.
It is.
And it is really, really quite a cool
my gosh.
experience.
It is, and it's. Thank you for taking me up here because I just been able just to see it in all its glory from here, but also to be able to understand, just looking at the restoration work that is constantly going on.
Yep.
Yeah.
The beautiful 28 acres of formal gardens at Knebworth largely date from the Victorian and Edwardian eras, but some features date back centuries.
Okay, Marty, what am I hugging right now? It's enormous.
So this is our oldest oak tree on the estate. This one dates back 360 years, the oldest recorded tree that we have.
Right.
However, I have been speaking to some tree specialists, and I think we've got some older trees within the estate as well, up to 450 years possibly.
Right.
But on record, this is the oldest oak tree that we have.
Record. Wow, she is wonderful.
It's a beautiful example.
Absolutely beautiful, and looks very healthy. She has just a lovely spot here as well, doesn't she?
Yeah, it really is. It's a perfect spot for it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful.
How wonderful. So you're quite new being head gardener, is that right?
Yes, I've been here just over a month now, so yeah, early days.
Wow.
But, yeah, I'm picking up things really quickly. I'm really interested in the history of this place anyway.
Yes.
So yeah, it's quite easy for me to get inspired about the different stories and the different characters over the years. So now we've just walked through the green garden and into the gold garden. So,
and with the golden sun. Thank you, Marty. I'm so happy. So this is wonderful. So tell me a little bit about this area of the garden.
Okay, so this is the gold garden, and we've got predominantly hot colours within this area. We've got this beautiful water feature, which is just giving that lovely sound of water as you wander through this area. So Robert, the first Earl of Lytton, he almost bankrupted the estate with the amount of work that he completed. He spent so much money on plants and you know, installing so many different features throughout the garden. He almost bankrupted the estate. So after him, his son Victor, he came in and he basically looked at it and thought, we need to simplify what we're doing here to be able to keep our costs down. So he enlisted the help of Edwin Lutyens.
Right.
And Edwin Lutyens came in, and he actually was his brother-in-law at the time.
Okay.
So that was quite helpful, seeing as he was such a celebrated architect.
Right.
But also an incredible landscape designer. He looked around and he thought, I'm going to create a series of rooms as we work our way down the garden.
Okay.
So this is the gold garden. We have like hot colours within this space. The green garden. We'll work our way through to the brick garden, which has got these beautiful pastel colours.
It's so wonderful, and just even, you know, that view is really spectacular because you're able to see the domes and the battlements and some of the griffins and gargoyles and just, you know, a powerful house.
The impact that Sir Edward Bulmer Lytton had on this house was incredible. I mean, the Gothic styling that you see now is really what sets this house apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
And standing apart from the house in the surrounding parkland is St. Mary's Church, where generations of the Lytton family forever rest.
Now watch your step into this ancient old church.
Yes, reminds me.
Is St.
the
Mary's.
age.
And of course this is much older than Knebworth House. This goes back to 1190. The bell tower was a later Victorian addition, but the body, the nave of the church here is, you know, it's ancient, it's phenomenal. But we have regular active services here, and we have memorials here, lists of those who gave their lives for the Great War. With the War Memorial, which we celebrate and honor every year, the church opened up and did an ingenious thing to remember all the different fallen individuals, but even up to a modern day, and now have this active archives, which we've been able to help them with, and getting more information from the community too, to come and understand the loss and the sacrifice, and to remember.
And to
which is
remember.
what it's all about. So there are lots of memorials, because this has been the family church for a long, long time. It's a Church of England church, but the family have worshipped here for many, many centuries. And so remember Pamela, Victor's wife, and of course remembering Victor himself here. We do have the mausoleum in the park as well, which Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton built originally for her mother and for herself. after that famous tithe argument.
Yes, yeah.
But there are other more modern inhabitants as well. Robert and Edith are there. Constance Lytton is there, the famous suffragette.
Yes.
So this brings us down into the Lytton Chapel, and this is where many of the 17th century family members are entombed and remembered.
Right.
And you can see as well with the different names when the house passed through the female line, and you can see Robinson Lytton and Strode, other names that have been brought in over time, but always with Lytton intact.
But lovely to see this special, special place.
What a special place Knebworth is. And it's been an absolute joy to spend time with Martha and explore the history of this spectacular building. Hello, dear viewers. Are you passionate about history and stately homes as much as I am? Then sign up for the American Countess newsletter. Here you'll get exclusive insider stories from my latest visits to castles, manors, and stately homes, and stay updated on all the exciting projects at Mapperton. You'll also get access to all of my blogs, like the recent Legendary Balls of British High Society. So don't miss out, subscribe today, and join our wonderful community of heritage enthusiasts.
I'm here at Somerleyton Hall in East Anglia, one of the finest Victorian historic houses in the UK. I'll be meeting with Hugh and Laura Crossley, Lord and Lady Somerleyton, whose family have lived here for over 160 years. I'll not only be looking at some of the historic interiors, but also some of the restoration projects that are happening right now, as well as the very impressive rewilding project. Hello, hello, hello.
Lovely to see you again.
It's so nice to see you. Hello, Hugh. How are you?
Philip. Right, nice to see you.
Lovely to see you both. And I had a lovely walk up, and lo and behold, this is, magnificent. Tell me a little bit about this extraordinary house, because it is extraordinary, and it's hidden. It sort of took me a while to kind of figure out where I was going, which I love, because then it's peaceful. You're not off a main road, so it's nice and peaceful, and then when you come here, it's heavenly. Mm.
Well, I love the idea, hidden jewel of the East.
Yes.
And it's sort of, there's been a house here for a long time, but there have been two significant houses. One was a Jacobean house built in 1610 by a family called the Wentworths. Right. Which is dimensionally, fundamentally what we're in now. Okay. And then along came, I think they ran out of money, as we all do, and along came Morton Peto, who was a big, quite famous industrialist who's building railways. But also famously the Houses of Parliament. He was the builder, not the architect.
He was the builder of the Houses of Parliament. Okay, fantastic.
He sort of happened across Somerleyton as he was building the railway line from Norwich to Lowestoft.
Okay.
It was kind of going for a song, I think, and Splash, obviously an enormous amount of money, kind of Victorianising it into what we see today.
Okay. So interestingly enough that you've mentioned Peto, because I did do a little bit of research when I knew that sort of this was a Peto house. We have a connection. So my father-in-law, the 11th Earl of Sandwich, his mother was a Peto, Rosemary Peto.
Amazing.
So there you go.
Amazing.
Yeah. So her father was obviously descended from Morton. Yeah.
Well, you probably know more about him than us.
Here we are. I mean, the architecture is fantastic. It's amazing what they would do. They would just sort of put up a facade to kind of hide what was there.
The original house. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's also he was a builder, so I guess in that sense knew how to create the effect he wanted without necessarily
starting from scratch again.
And spending all the money.
And then, so tell me how the Crosleys came here, though, because it's not through the Peto line.
Right? No. But fundamentally, he'd underwritten a big railway project in Latin America. And,
Peto did.
Yeah, which I think when he lost his money through that, and we were looking, I guess, and this is a bit I don't really know, is why we were looking here.
Right.
I know the spa towns of Yarmouth and and Scarborough and the like was thought to be healthy, and Victorian tourism was sort of taking off, and so that's how.
But tell me a little bit about the person. What was his name?
Sir Francis, who is out there in the hall, in fact.
Okay, so Francis Crossley then negotiated, bought from Peter, but what was his trade?
So we were in carpets. So the Crossleys were, the Crossley firm was called Crossley Carpets, and it actually was running until 1982, but had become a kind of big family thing.
Yeah.
And obviously it started as a kind of big cottage industry, as they all were, and then in the early 19th century, John Crossley, Francis' father, set out on his own and built up a big company, and everything began to be brought into factories.
Right.
So they had a coal mine and a river and a big chunk of land in sort of Halifax, and that became this great big thing. And the three sons, Francis being the one I'm descended for, kind of helped really take it on to the next more kind of global level. It was I did a lot of research and I got very excited about emulating them, but I've sort of failed slightly.
Right. No. Slightly. Yeah, no, I'm sure you didn't fail. But so that's fantastic. That's interesting to know that again the trade was carpets, and I guess around that period, the Victorian time, people were carpeting, weren't they?
Absolutely.
No, we're responsible for kind of asthma, I think.
And also the automated loom, which meant that carpets could be mass produced, and therefore carpets were really for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, the clever part really in terms of what they achieved, I mean, they were obviously hard working, but they had an engineer who, even the fact that I don't know his name tells you what happens if you don't get remembered. History is written by the victors, but Francis went to America and around Europe and trademarked several bits of kit that were being used in Worsted in the sort of linen and cloth trade, and kind of re-engineered them to work on a carpet loom. So they were the first to have a steam-powered loom, and therefore they were ahead in that sense, but also then had royalties on the bit of kit.
Okay.
So that's what really took it from being a big firm to a kind of galactic firm.
Right.
And then they bought Somerleyton so they could use up all that money running a house.
Right.
Which they've done pretty well.
Which has done pretty well, because you've now been here for over 160 years.
But I am very fond of going to Halifax, and we take the kids, and there is a lot of built Crossley heritage there. And when one knows people in Norfolk, Suffolk who've been here much longer, I'm still slightly torn between being not really any longer belonging in Halifax and not yet truly belonging here.
Yeah.
I think I know. I mean, I do think I'd rather belong here.
You're in a lovely part of the country.
It is special.
I mean, East Anglia sees the most sun in all of the UK, so
so they say.
Yeah. Well, come to West Dorset. I don't think we've seen it for about 9 months, so it could be true. Now, listen, I know that you have incredible interiors here, so I'd love to get a tour of some of the rooms.
Yeah, well we'd like to show you.
Have a look.
Great. Wow, so I'm entering in, and I have this amazing view.
That is the west front.
The original front of the house, in fact.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so that was one of the reverses.
You came in the rear entrance.
I've been downgraded. Crikey. So this would have been the original entrance.
Yeah, so Peter put the parterre in and changed the orientation so that all the traffic comes in the back.
You use this door, yes?
Yeah,
obviously,
we do.
to get onto the parterre and to...
Yeah, and you can bring a vehicle. I mean, we don't really do it, but you can, in theory, bring a vehicle around. And
right.
I always imagine
and it's west facing, so you do get wonderful sunsets.
Yeah, it's lovely, and that fountain is fantastic. Look at it; it's just bubbling over. Okay, so we're going to go left or right?
Let's go right.
Okay,
This is the library.
Loving this color as well. Was this at one point, one large room rather than a suite of rooms?
Well, I think we think not, and we haven't got a very conclusive set of plans from the 17th century, but I think having studied other buildings of the same period, that this sort of arrangement of having kind of 4 interlocking rooms along the front of the house was quite standard.
Right.
And I think Peter sort of kept to that, really. But this one, the library now, originally the library was actually in what is now the dining room, and this was originally the dining room but was double height, which must have been a fabulous space.
Yeah.
So my great-grandparents put an extra floor in, with more bedrooms in the 1920s, and then because I guess less and less servants, they moved the dining room to be a bit closer to the back end of the house.
Right, which makes
and brought
sense.
the library in here, which, you know, it works very well.
I'm noticing the color because I love walking into rooms and seeing what other historic house homeowners have done. Lovely color.
It's teal, it's called teal, and we had the help of a colourist called David Oliver who chose this colour predominantly because he felt it really brought out the colours on the spines of the books, and it really does.
Yeah.
I feel it completely transformed this room because before it was sort of pale cream,
Right.
and it just didn't have that sort of, you know, excitement.
Needed a bit of pop.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
And I mean, I love it every time I walk in.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And this room is used, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
there's
Particularly in the winter.
There's pictures
because-
everywhere of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
two
very
of
much
you.
so, yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And the carpet is fantastic.
Yeah, it's sort of got a few
Is this
worn patches.
It came,
this
from,
from-
it came from a Crossley
that-
London house.
that's
I
what I
Yeah,
was
mean,
back in the
gonna
day
ask.
Yeah.
when there was a lot of money washing around, we had a Carlton House Terrace, a big. Well, they were all on leases in those days.
Right,
but
right.
When we exited that, it came back from there, so it doesn't quite. It's not designed to fit.
Right.
But it's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah,
it's
it
actually
is.
an
What-
Axminster, not a Crossley. We didn't make beautiful
Oh,
things
and
like
who's this?
We
This
made,
is Juno.
We made.
Juno. Hello.
Hello, June.
Hello, Juno. No, I needed to ask about a carpet. I was waiting for one
Yeah,
to
yeah.
turn
And
up.
it's the
so
only
there
one
we
that
go.
isn't
Well,
a Crossley carpet.
It's far too pretty. No, there are some really nice, pretty ones, but this is actually an Axminster.
Okay.
And we're constantly trying to work out how we can repair.
No, I know. We have the
It's
same.
not- I
it's
think you just
it's
have to
on
let
the
it live
list.
its life and then
If
let
you
it
come
die.
up with a good method, do let us know.
It's on the list that gets that long. All right, should we head through here?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I've just walked into this room and it's made me smile. It's
Yeah.
bright, it's cheery, it's like sunshine, hello.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It glows in the evening light. It's actually called the Oak Parlour, but we now call it the Yolk Parlour because it is yellow.
Perfect.
Chinese yellow, in fact.
And-
Chinese emperor. That's what it's
Okay,
called.
Chinese Emperor yellow. Okay, but where did this color, was it here originally? Or did you just look at some colorways and
Yet
you thought,
again, it was our great friend David Oliver who chose the teal.
yes.
I think we had decided we wanted to just brighten it up. It was very dark. It was, you know, when we only ever used it in the evening, and now
Yeah, it's sort of varnished.
It's a
the
beautiful
Victorians
room that- yeah.
varnished the wood,
Right.
dark. They did. I mean, that was their thing.
Yeah, of course it was.
And,
That and gold.
And now it's very much yellow, which I think is, you know, part of our legacy.
I think, and it's also the contrast with the
Yeah,
dark is fantastic. It's lovely. So when did you paint? Because it looks like it's just been put on.
We did it especially for you, actually.
Okay.
No, it has been done this year.
April, May, roughly.
Oh,
So
it was this year?
Yeah, we literally just bit the bullet and did it.
Can you tell me a little bit about the plaster work as well? Because that's caught my eye. Is that Rococo?
Well, so these two doors and the upper surround of the fireplace are all hangers of the 17th century, and the sort of not quite egg and dark, but the frieze, I guess you call it, around the top.
Yep.
And it's an oak panelled room that then the Victorians darkened. But it was always, certainly when we were doing, guided tours when I was young and learning from Dad, it was sort of fundamentally left as it was by Peter as a kind of nod to the old house. And so, which is why, in a sense, I was rather nervous about changing it.
So
I've kind of
let me
grown
go
up with
back to that. So when you painted this, it was the oak paneling.
Yeah.
It was indeed.
It was? Wow.
It was this.
Wow. Okay.
So
much better. Much
And
better.
actually, I have to say, I'm a
Much
convert because we
better.
come in here a lot now in the
But also
evening.
now you actually see the moulding, whereas
abs-
before it didn't stand out at
No.
all. And
Yeah.
so now you come in and you look at that and you think, how exquisite.
You do-
So
much.
it does, like you said, it makes you smile. It makes
It
me
does.
smile every time I come in here.
Much better. That's a great choice. This is a great choice.
Yeah. But
And-
also to anchor it and bring it a bit of Dour northern. This is a Crossley carpet.
I was waiting for this.
You
I
can
was
tell,
waiting for
kind of
this.
brown. And yeah, so the Crossleys, had the crosslets, which is now in their coat of arms, but it was always essentially a brand for Crossley carpets before they ever were ennobled and had a coat of arms. And actually, rather amazingly, John, who was the original, and I think really the most entrepreneurial, who started John 1, as we call them, used to roll a sort of little bit of parchment up in the middle of his carpets, with something which probably now sounds a bit kitsch, but let every carpet be its own traveller. But what I like about that with this on, and was that he was foreseeing really what became a global business, you know, and he was just sitting in Halifax with having a, you know, dreaming of being big, but it actually happened. But I like the idea that he was already signing, in a sense, his carpets with this idea that they would go all around the world. Which
a magic carpet ride.
Well, that's maybe he was.
Maybe he was
maybe
into Aladdin.
That's right. Right, exactly. It's beautiful, but this works. So I mean, everything works well.
It does bring out the best in
it
in all
really
things,
does. And do you use this room?
Now, obviously, we use it much more. And we used to only really come in here in the evenings, and now it's a beautiful room.
It's
all
really,
times of day.
It's really beautiful, I have to say. I love this room. I mean, I love the library as well, but I think the yoga parlor.
Yeah, they're nice. They work well together.
Could be my favorite. Okay, well now I need to go see the other room, which is
the ballroom.
Screaming red.
Yeah,
there we go.
We love bright colours.
Okay, I have lots of questions. I'm going to start with the sort of red-pink silk.
This
panels.
is Gainsborough silk.
This is
absolutely beautiful, and we're actually in the middle of trying to get it replicated, because we're doing a restoration project in here.
Right. And well, I went to Gainsborough Silks and I was overwhelmed with what I saw, because they haven't changed for 100 years.
Absolutely.
Those machines, and you can go back through the archives and look at, you know, the same silk that you want to have that might have been hanging. It's
absolutely.
there.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well,
I wore Gainsborough silk on our wedding day.
Did you?
Yeah. And that's why.
Oh
you know,
my
I thought
goodness.
it was tied up nicely.
Yeah, very much so.
Well, yeah, as you know, it's not easy to put together enough people to have a ball these days.
No.
So we and actually in the evening particularly, and this is why the table's here, we had a private client who wanted to dine in here, and it actually does work with the sort of infinity mirror effect really well.
And the candlelight makes the ceiling sort of sparkle.
Yes.
There's still room to dance in the corners.
in the corners, yeah.
Have you danced in here before?
Yeah.
Oh, the floor is sprung.
Oh,
we can
my!
maybe dance later.
No,
yeah,
is it really?
It is. We have had parties in here, but I've found, like you said, you need quite a lot of people to make it filled, sort of, you know, busy.
Right.
So I think smoke machines are quite useful for that.
Yeah.
Then
Well,
you can't
now
really
we've got
see.
all this back.
I mean, the story here is I was found in a cloud of dry ice by a fireman because we couldn't hear our alarm going off, dancing on my end to "You're Always on My Mind."
Yeah, by the Pet Shop Boys.
No.
I mean, I think he was never not going to rescue me on the basis of my musical choice.
But when he arrived, I thought he was a stripper, so it was different. And then he said, "Whose terrible music is this?" And I was like, "That'll be my husband." Yeah.
I think it's a great song. Pet Shop Boys.
I got to ask,
can't play the Pet Shop Boys.
did you get married here?
Yeah.
Okay, because
Yeah,
I've seen lots of sort of
Yeah,
wedding
yeah, we did,
pictures.
yeah.
Yeah, and actually we used the front 4 rooms, and then we moved all the furniture in here, and you know, the front 4 rooms.
You mentioned though a little bit of restoration. So these look like they're in, you know, fantastic condition here, but I've noticed this because of course I come from a historic house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always, anytime you walk into a room, you spot these. So I hope you don't mind that I've spotted that, but
We're desperately trying to hide this from you.
Make a time.
But so I believe that these panels obviously got a bit more light, and
Yeah,
so
I think it's light damage, yeah.
and obviously during the war, this was used as a drawing room, wasn't it, Hugh?
Yeah, my great-grandparents and grandparents sort of shared the house, along with, as far as I can tell, lots of convalescing offices.
Okay.
And then, so they had one, this was set up as a drawing room in those days. So I imagine there's quite a lot of smoking.
Yeah.
And obviously
a bit
some
more wear
friction
and
over
tear.
here.
And some friction over here. So your plan is
we've gone to Gainsborough and we want to replicate this completely.
And that's what's amazing about Gainsborough.
Yeah, absolutely. Really incredible. And I love this colour.
Yeah.
And even though there's so many different shades of it in here.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's much faded. You can see it's sort of very pale pink here, and still quite full pink over there.
Wow. This is, I mean, it's beautiful though. It's interesting going from different room to different room.
Yeah, and actually, even just doing it with you now, that's what I'm really noticing is kind of how different they are.
Yeah. Of course, I understand, living in a historic house, every time you walk into a room, you sort of spot something and there's something that needs to be restored, or it's constant.
Yeah, it's never ending. And it's constantly evolving. It keeps you busy.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. This is stunning. Obviously, you.
Well, quite a long time ago.
Not that long ago. Okay, I need to know about this. It's the one thing that I haven't had done yet, is having my portrait painted, and it's been talked about for probably the past 10 years. No time for children, whatever, no time. But I'm really, sort of almost getting desperate. I need to hear all about this. This is absolutely stunning.
This is quite interesting because I didn't actually commission this, but it was how Hugh and I met through this painting. So, and then it was given to us as a wedding present. So
oh my gosh!
I was working in London for a portrait commissioning gallery called Fine Art Commissions.
This is your background.
Yeah, and this is so I've spent a lot of time looking at portraits and talking to people about getting their portraits painted. And so this artist called Tom Leverett came into the gallery and he said, I'm not getting any portraits commissioned. And my boss, Sarah Stewart, said, well, you've got to paint someone and then have it hanging in the gallery. So to cut a very long story short, he painted me. And this is the painting. He then showed it to Hugh and said, what did he say?
Well, I can tell you what he said, actually, because we were on a trip together. He was researching a book and we've gone to Kabul. And he showed me the picture of Laura and said, well, if you want to meet a girl with foreign her blood, then you need to meet Laura, which is exactly what I did the moment I got back.
Yeah, he came to the private view where the painting was being unveiled and sort of, loitered around.
Right.
And then, the rest is history. And then Tom gave us the painting as a wedding present.
Oh my gosh, he gave you this portrait for your wedding.
Yeah.
How it is stunning, I have to say. I've got to, and every time I see a stunning portrait like that, I think, I've got to do it before
You've got to get
I
painted.
go all grey. Do you see? I do want to get it done before I'm all grey. So I bet I can give them a picture, apparently. Is that right? They can just paint from a picture.
Tom predominantly paints from photographs as well, so,
Okay.
It's possible, even with a very busy
So
schedule.
I could just, give one when I was sort of like, I don't know, 25 or something. No, I don't think that's going to work.
Easily.
I need to look a little bit, sort of
but
like
also, it's
the
great
part.
that it's full length because actually,
It is.
apart from my great grandmother in the main hall, there aren't really any sort of full length, and there's a lot of wall in houses like this. So anyone who gives you anything big,
big pictures get a thumbs up.
Gift.
But this is what I like because I do like it full length, and it makes me think. I don't think I want to be seated or.
No, I think you need to be seen in
full
royal glory.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stunning. So many rooms. Okay, this room's nice and open, not a ballroom.
No. Well, we call this the morning room, and ordinarily we have a lovely big table in here because it does get some lovely morning light.
Yes.
And for private hiring of the house, it's a lovely room to have breakfast in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. So you'd move a table back in here.
Yeah. We moved it for an event the other day, but originally it was a billiard room. So when I was a child, it was sort of green. There was no table, funny enough, but it was still in the kind of green baize sort of billiard room.
Now that has caught my eye up on
these beautiful plates I found in the cellar actually, I thought how beautiful they should be on display, and they're all hand painted from Worcester. 1800s.
I mean, absolutely stunning, and you're right. To display them much better than leaving them in the cellar.
In a box in the cellar.
Yeah.
Had to build a cabinet to display them.
Well, yes, that was the only downside.
And then tell me a little bit more about the overmantel here.
This is actually from the library when it was originally the Great Hall.
Yeah. So when the dining room was double height. With a big overmantel, it either got sold or broken. I'm not sure, and they put it back together here.
Okay.
But I think for me the kind of lesson, actually all the way down to mum and dad, was that they were incredibly good all through the generations of just reusing stuff, whereas now people tend to, maybe cast stuff aside. I like the fact that they were keen on giving things a second life in a different way or a different place.
It's beautiful in here, I think.
Yeah, it's stunning. Who's on either side?
So we've got summer and winter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look at winter, really cold. Well, I wish she would rear her head a little bit more this summer.
Yes, absolutely. Certainly does in the oak parlour.
But we've had the sun today.
Yes, absolutely great.
And then notice these plates here.
Yes, they look
They're
beautiful
there. I love it that you've hung them here.
It's lovely and warm in here.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, this is a fragment of the winter garden that still survives.
Oh, brilliant.
The winter garden, built during Morton Pito's tenure of the Hall, must have been spectacular. To hear more about the winter garden and the history of Somerleyton, I joined Dawn Robinson in the library.
Dawn, it is lovely to be here with you. One of, I guess, my real interests are about the history of these houses and kind of how they evolved.
Yes.
So, of course, I love hearing the stories of the living history, the custodians that are here now, like Hugh and Laura, but going back into the past. And you have been here for how many years?
Over 40. I started in 1979 altogether.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Seems ages ago now.
Right, but you must have seen so many changes because, of course,
I have,
in
yes.
1979 it was still relatively new that houses were opening up to the public. You know, it was a sort of a, you know, not many of them, even at that point, had opened.
I first started to work for Who's parents, the late Lord and Lady Somerleyton. And I've built up over the years my history knowledge. So if a visitor who came through happened to ask me a question and I couldn't answer it, I would research it. So the next time if I was asked it, I would then know, or hopefully know.
Yeah.
And so I find history fascinating too.
Yeah,
There's an
absolutely.
awful lot of history here over the generations that have lived here. So
Right.
I've got several guidebooks over the years how the house has changed. And the very first opening of the actual house,
Yes.
because they used to open the gardens even, I believe, when Morton Pito was here.
Okay.
But the actual house itself wasn't open to the public until Coronation year. That was in 1953.
Well, that's actually quite early on, if
There
you
is-
think
so that
about
was
it.
the present Lord Somerleyton's grandparents who opened it.
Wow.
Then, yes.
Right. Because, of course, that's right after the Second World War.
Yes.
When these historic houses, you know, many of them had been requisitioned.
Yes, they had.
The owners came back. They were in such a state that some of them, you know, it was too expensive for them to restore. And so there were so many houses that were pulled down.
There was, so sadly, they're no longer here.
Yeah.
But luckily, the families that lived here have managed to keep the house
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
So that was wonderful
Yes.
to be able to do that, and the family is still here. I think the present Lord Somerleyton, he would like to emulate the Jernigans, because they were here from 1305 to 1604.
No.
13 generations.
Wow.
That's a long while for one family, isn't it?
That is. So a family was here from the 14th century.
Well, 1240
Oh,
is the first family they can trace here.
13th century then. Wow.
So Peter Fitzosbert,
Okay.
he was the first family. And then we move on then through marriage to the Jernigan family.
Okay.
And then the Jernigan family, as I said, were here for the 13 generations.
Incredible.
And then they sold the house to John Wentworth. And I believe he came up from Ipswich in Suffolk. So he
Okay.
was a Suffolk person. And he
Right.
bought the house, and he was the one who rebuilt it into the Jacobean manor house
Right.
around about 1610. We had very much the Dutch influence with the Dutch gable ends
Yes.
and everything then.
Yes.
And then the Wentworths, they were very much royalists, and they stayed here until 1672.
Okay.
And then they sold out to Admiral Sir Thomas Allen, whose portrait is in the Oak Room through there. He retired from all his naval duties, and he lived here. And then he died in 1685.
Okay.
And he's buried in Somerleyton Church. And then the last of Admiral Allen's descendants, they were the Anguishers, and the last one that died out, and that was left in a will to Lord Sidney Godolphin Osborne.
Okay.
He didn't want it at all.
Oh.
So he just put the house up, the estate up for sale by auction.
Right.
And this is when Morton Pito saw this, and he thought he would like to have a country estate, I suppose,
Yes.
you see.
Yes.
So he purchased the house, and the land, and then he set about rebuilding it. It was a Victorian house. The first Lord Somerleyton, because as I said, they purchased the estate in 1863 from Morton Peter, who sadly got into financial difficulties.
Right, so he had to then sell it off.
He had to sell off. So that's how come the Crossleys came here. They've been here now since 1863.
Wow. Dawn, can I just ask you a little bit about these? Are these all guidebooks?
These are all guidebooks over the period of years, some from before I even started.
Gosh.
Yes.
And then you're really able through these guidebooks to see how the rooms in particular
have changed.
Exactly. So can you show me just a little bit, because I've done a lovely tour with Hugh and Laura, and I just want to, I have in, of course, my mind's eye what these rooms look like, but it'd be interesting to see what they were back in the past. So I'm going to try to name, I should do name that room.
This is an early one of the dining room, the formal, what you call the formal dining room.
Oh my gosh.
And there's no Crossley carpet on the floor there.
Right.
And there's all the panelling.
So the panelling.
In here. Yeah, there's all panelling, and they're still there.
But
and then when the late Lord Somerleyton, that's whose father married Belinda in 1963, a few years later, she decided to lighten the room.
Okay.
And they changed it to that colour.
So they painted it.
Painted it. The panelling is hidden up at the back here.
Yep, yep.
The ceiling is in the style of Robert Adam, and they had the Crossley carpet made for the floor, the same as in the oak room, with the crosslets taken from the Crossley coat of arms.
Yes.
And then, of course, when Hugh and Lara came, they changed it to the room that you see now.
That's a real transformation. It's amazing to see what each generation does. And then what about this room?
This hasn't changed an awful lot because this is where we are.
Oh, yes.
We're sitting now. This is the library.
Yep.
Now, when Morton Peter lived here, this was his grand banqueting hall, and it had a very high ceiling in here.
Okay.
And the fireplace, which was moved with the figures of summer and winter into the morning room, used to be here with a big overmantel, but the overmantel disappeared.
And you can see there's still the same carpet in here.
Still the same carpet.
Yep, yep.
Then the other room is the oak room, which is now entirely different.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That is the oak room?
That's the oak room.
Right there.
Right there.
Sort of the bright, happy, smiley face.
Yes.
That's
lightened it a lot, having that colour. It was a very dark room.
It was. Now I can see why. This has just recently gone through a huge transformation. Because it's been the wood panelling up until Hugh and Laura.
Yeah. But they just changed it, just the last few months. And this book is before the Crossley carpet again was put in.
Yeah.
So it's quite fascinating.
It's fascinating.
To go over the
records. We all need to see records and see what
how the house has changed through the different generations.
Yes, absolutely.
That have lived here.
Oh, fantastic, Dawn. I mean, and it's so important to keep these guidebooks because you can see a real
see the transformation which has happened. And the very first one, what they had in my little folder here, they was very basic.
Right. Oh,
as I said, this is 1954, and they didn't have any pictures at all, and hardly anything about each room in.
Love that. And is that just a?
So this is
a later edition.
More or less the same. More or less the same.
Right. Fantastic.
But there's no pictures in it.
No.
That one's dated 1954.
Yeah. Too expensive.
I think this was 54, and I believe this was 1953.
Right when they opened.
Right when they opened. Yes.
Fantastic.
And they showed the west front on this one and the east front on this one. That's
yeah, I'm not sure which.
This is the west front here.
The vista. I'm not sure which vista I prefer. Do you know? I look at both of them and I think, oh, outstanding. Now, what do we have here?
So this is a sale catalogue when unfortunately Morton Peter had to put the house up for sale, which was in 1861.
Okay, so he
actually put the house up for sale.
But it took 2 years until
he sold various bits off.
Okay.
And before Sir Francis Crossley actually purchased it. And the late Lord Somerleyton, again, because I did work for him for a few years, that's his father, I have to keep referring to him.
Yes.
He did tell me that his great-grandfather was a typical Yorkshireman. he waited for the price to get rock bottom before he bought it.
Well done him. Well done him. So this was done.
This is a plan of the rooms then, and that was done in 1861.
Yeah, and I can see.
This is called the sale catalogue. And it's very good condition.
It is very good. Somerleyton Hall, grounds plan of mansion. So they're referring to it as a mansion.
And of course the rooms then had different names. The oak parlour was the music room.
Right.
And we got the billiard room, which is now of course the morning room.
Which is the morning room,
It
yes.
was known as the conference room when the late Lord Somerleyton was here, because they used to hold various conferences in that.
And
obviously.
then is the drawing room is what
And
the
I
ballroom,
always
is it
called
right?
Yeah, the white and gold drawing room.
Yes.
And of course the Crosleys then called that the ballroom.
Right. Gosh, they really did.
Because that was the biggest room they could use to have the dance.
Rename. This is brilliant. You've got dining hall, which we're in now.
Yes.
Which is now the library.
Yes.
Those, as you mentioned, those two swapped. And then you've got breakfast room, stores, servant stairs, housekeeper room. Got a little business room over there.
Yes, and they call that the breakfast room. The family call that the boudoir.
Right, the boudoir, yes. And then you have the old servants' hall. You have...
Because that's the side now where
wood,
Hugh and Lara
coals, boots. This is fantastic.
The boot room, yes.
The boot room, yes. The lauder.
Still got a boot room,
The
yes.
game lauder. It's so interesting just to read these.
How
Look,
times change.
You've got the cloaks for gentlemen.
And ladies.
Entrance and ladies. Gun room. Everybody had to have a gun with them.
a gun room.
Cloaks for ladies, as you mentioned. And then you've got all of your stables here.
The stables.
And your aviaries. But this is absolutely
That's
fascinating.
in such good condition
It
too.
is. And
to see how well
it's
that's been
just
kept. And that's all listed, all the different things. There's the winter garden and the palm house. What was there? All we've got left now is the little bit of the winter garden through there. And here's a photograph or an engraving, I should say.
Oh my gosh, look at
it's
that
an
engraving.
Of the winter garden with the huge fountain in it.
So what happened to the winter garden?
The upkeep
was just too much.
Was too much. And with the First World War looming, and the gardeners were going off to fight. And as I said, there was a team of gardeners just to look after that.
Right.
And they just couldn't do it.
They couldn't do it, so
They
it just
couldn't
fell
do it.
into disrepair.
And so they decided to dismantle it.
Right.
So that took a little bit of time to dismantle it. But they've got some of the statues still left.
Oh,
in
fantastic.
there. Yes, and they've still got 1 or 2 statues about in the grounds. But they've got apricot and fig houses. Wow. And
because of course, yeah, those Victorians, they wanted their exotic fruit.
This is a view of how this room,
What?
how it was.
No. What? Look at that ceiling.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to the ceiling. I don't think it's up there above, but that was the ceiling in here. And that's the fireplace, you see, with the big oven mat. We don't know what happened with the summer and winter figures.
So that's the summer and winter figures.
Yes, which is in the morning
and
room.
that is the overmantel. Yeah, that no one knows exactly where it's gone.
Where it's gone? No, it's just disappeared.
Oh my goodness, it's fascinating to see this. At least you have a fantastic record. Do you see? I mean, that's so important. What a treat. Just to be able to imagine what the house was like when Sir Morton Peto was here, but in particular, to see that lovely engraving of what
this room used
this
to look,
room
you
used
wouldn't
to look
believe
like.
it otherwise.
Unbelievable.
You couldn't imagine
No.
it, to say it was a grand
No.
banqueting hall with a
Yeah.
high ceiling.
Incredible. You never know. Some generation in future might look at that engraving, and think, do you know what? I'm going to take it back to that.
Well, you never know.
You never know.
You never know, do you?
Thank
never
you,
know.
Dawn. What a treat.
Must be delightful to chat to you
Yeah,
too.
I know. Brilliant.
Somerleyton Hall has been reimagined by each generation who have called it home. From Tudor Manor House, Jacobean Mansion, to the flamboyant Victorian vision we see today. Sir Samuel Morton Peto remodeled Somerleyton in the mid-19th century, but never realized his dream of living in the hall. He was declared bankrupt in 1861. Since then, it has been the home of the Crossley family.
So Hugh, ever since I arrived, I've been fascinated by this clock tower. Did Pito build it?
Well, yeah, so the house you see today was kind of largely his creation, and what's sort of not so much known, he was one of the big building contractors of the Industrial Revolution, and he built Nelson's Column, he built the House of Parliament, and a lot of the railway infrastructure in East Anglia, so he was quite a titan of industry.
Yes. So
Prince Albert created a competition for what we now all know as Big Ben.
Right.
And it was actually won by the Dent family.
Yes.
All the great clockmakers of the world kind of entered the competition.
So anybody could apply from all over the world.
It was an international, and obviously most of them European. And Vulamy, if I'm saying it right, a French clockmaker, very famous, was sort of runner-up in a sense. Anyway, Pito obviously thought, I'll have a bit of that, and kind of rebuilt, bought the clock and built a tower for it to be housed in.
Oh my gosh!
So it's kind of indirectly famous.
Yes.
Hanging on the coattails of Big Ben.
This could have been Elizabeth Tower.
This could have been Elizabeth Tower, yeah.
Oh my gosh, but how clever of Pito to say, all right, I'll take the second best one and I'll house it here at my house. And it's wonderful to see that it's, still ticking away and still making beautiful noises.
Yeah, there's a slight marriage split between me having grown up with it, and I kind of need the sound of the clock as a sort of, like the tower, but ravens need the tower, and Laura loves putting the silencer on so it doesn't chime because she doesn't need it. But anyway.
Yeah. And what's the maintenance around it? Is it a lot of maintenance? I mean, it's what is this? We're looking at sort of around, over 150 years old.
Well, yeah. So the answer is, in my time, actually just before sort of 2016 to 18, there's a very good Norfolk-based clockmaker who does other clock towers and church clocks, and he did a sort of 2-year restoration, taking everything apart and cleaning it. And I can't remember of one before that. I'm no doubt maybe there's been a previous one, but just because it was running slow, like a watch. Fundamentally, hasn't been. The tower itself needs much more maintenance than the clock.
Really fantastic. And I didn't even realize that it does it at the quarter hour.
On the courses, yeah. Oh yeah. You never know.
All day long.
We're never late.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of mid-19th century Avery that extends all the way along here.
Right.
But this octagonal section that you see scaffolded was in a really poor state of repair. So we're delighted to have a historic houses grant without which really I wouldn't probably be doing it.
Right.
But it's
well done.
Needless to say, we found a lot more problems than we thought.
Always the case.
We've broken the back of it.
Right. So was this built by Pito as well? Obviously, when you
came absolutely, yeah.
That was quite a popular sort of Victorian, I guess, addition to have an Avery.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, particularly right now in the context of aviaries, is that in those days, as people were pushing around the world and bringing back exotic species to kind of show off, our plan anyway is, once this is done, is to, you can probably hear in the background, there's a pair of turtle doves, but is to put things in it for breed and release that are missing from the UK countryside. So it's got a kind of up-to-date reason for being, rather than exotic birds that would have fitted mid-19th century. So, and it's quite important that, because otherwise, kind of why restore it to a degree.
Yeah.
So it's,
and of course it falls in line with the whole rewilding project that you're doing here as well. Now, hi, I'm Julie.
Hi Julie, I'm Dave.
Hi Dave. I'm always interested in speaking to, the craftsmen who are here recreating or stabilizing and doing what you need to do to make sure that this survives for the next, 170 years.
Yeah.
So what have you been working on since this project started?
Well, basically the whole thing was rotten.
Yeah.
So we've used the wood called sapele to do the construction work. We've basically replaced the ring beam on the bottom. We've also replaced the whole ring beam at the top.
Right.
And at the moment we're putting another ring beam through the middle section.
Okay.
Very small percentage of the wood that we managed to save.
Right, because it was so rotted?
Oh, so rotten. This facade here is the original detail that we've managed to save, but obviously that will flow all the way round.
You'll have to get somebody in to do the detail, the carving.
Well, hopefully Dave, yeah.
Will you do that as well?
Yes, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'll do the carving work. We're just doing the slow process of getting it structurally sound first.
Yeah.
And then once that's complete, we can then start doing all the detailing work.
That's probably the most fun.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because it really brings it to life. And it must be quite nice working on a day like this.
Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous and an idyllic.
Is it always the sunny in East Anglia? That's what everybody tells me.
No, it rains and it's cold.
Okay, cut.
Okay. Anyway, thanks, Dave. This has been amazing. It's always fun for me, especially as a historic house homeowner, just to see the restoration projects that go on. So yeah.
Lovely.
Well done.
Thank you.
Done.
Thank you.
That's a pleasure.
Like all historic houses, the restoration and renovation of Somerleyton is constant. But to see the buildings and the interiors take on new life is incredibly heartening. Laura showed me some of the bedrooms which have been modernized.
Right, so how many bedrooms do you have in total? Not the ones that are just used by
I
guests.
think we have about 19.
Right, so yeah, lots of
I mean, that's
lots of
if
space.
you include the bedrooms in the tower.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You must include the bedrooms in the tower. Wow. So all rooms, of course, in historic houses have names. Name of this room.
Well, it's actually called the Tapestry room.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
For me, tapestries, we've got one at Mapperton. I'm desperate to restore, and it's in our bedroom called the West Room. And that's interesting how you've done. I mean, I assume the Victorians probably did that, but
I didn't cut it in half. No, I think that would have gone down very well.
But
it's interesting that they did split it, but actually,
it works.
They weren't hanging in here when we decided this was a storeroom and we turned it into a bedroom. And because it was called the Tapestry room on the bells, I thought, well, let's get them up. And actually, of course, they fit perfectly, and they were divided. So I'm assuming for this particular space,
it's perfect. It works perfectly. So, as a guest of yours or anybody else who wants to come and stay here with friends and family, this is one of the bedrooms they can stay in.
Indeed.
So let me ask you about ensuite bathrooms, because of course that was a big thing in these houses. They didn't have ensuite bathrooms. It was like one for 50 people.
It was a bun fight.
Yeah. Yes, it was. So did you embark, who put in the ensuite bathrooms?
Hugh and I, we did. We've actually put in, I'm going to say, around 10 bathrooms since we've been here.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So pretty much all the bedrooms had a dressing room. So we basically just put a bath right in the middle of the room. And they look like they've always been there.
Right. You have done a lot of the interiors here. I mean, and you've done obviously 10 bathrooms. You've just told me that as well. But is that something that when you arrived here and you saw the state of it, which I assume was all right, but it needed to be...
Yeah, it was great. But I think, if we were going to do, private hire for the house, you have to be at a certain standard.
Yes.
And, because we have very discerning visitors, and I felt that, bathrooms were a must.
Yes.
And then, gradually we've just sort of added to what was there already, but just embellished it as we've been going along.
Yeah. This is a project, though, with historic houses that it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah,
I need to be restored, renovated.
For sure. And I felt like Somerleyton was a bit of a sleeping beauty when I first came here. She had everything, but she just needed a bit more. And everything you do, I feel like she really sort of puts her arms around you and, is grateful.
All right, bedroom one, beautiful ensuite bathroom. Next one.
Let's go.
Okay, great. I'm already loving the color in here. Colors, but the main color.
This is called the Crimson Room. And as you can see, I'm not really a minimalist.
No.
And this was my husband's nursery when he was a child.
Really?
I mean, how wonderful for them to live in such a, not live, but, be playing with their toys in such a beautiful room.
Yeah, no, absolutely beautiful. But can we discuss, though, the wallpaper? Was that Laura?
Yes.
choice.
Well, yeah,
choice.
Because it's called the Crimson Room, I mean, I don't know if this is actually crimson, but I saw it and I thought, I've got to have it. I love the scale of it.
And another ensuite bathroom.
Indeed. And that was Hugh's nanny's bedroom.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So let me just ask you, coming in here and from, I guess, one historic house owner to another who's married in to not only the family, but the historic house itself. Do you ever find, I mean, for me, did you ever find it a bit daunting at first? You arrive and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a beast.
Yeah.
We need to evolve because constantly we do. Things aren't like they were even 30 years ago, 20 years ago.
But not even, things have changed since we even got married, I
Right.
would say.
Yeah.
Like we were saying, the footfall for the house tours has, seriously dropped off.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, I think we both agreed that the way forward for us was to do private hire, and to do weddings as well.
Right.
And filming.
Yeah, and filming.
Which also, this house lends itself to various sort of genres.
Yes.
And so, yeah, we had to evolve. Somerleyton has been used twice now as a sort of Sandringham sort of, stand-in, if you like. So we did it for the Crown, and it was amazing because, it sort of has some sort of resemblance.
Right.
To
So
Sandringham.
And that would have been so much fun and a lot of work.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
how
was.
many people were here? How much crew?
Gosh. I mean, they were here for 2 weeks. It's like the circus moved in.
Right.
And it was just so extraordinary just to watch it unfold. Such a slick operation.
Yeah.
I didn't find it a hindrance at all. I mean, I didn't even want them to leave.
Right. Oh, that's amazing.
That sounds so tragic.
No. No, but they were using the house.
Yeah, it was really great.
That you've put a lot of love and energy into it. So it was fantastic.
Yeah, it was.
What do you feel? I mean, there's so much that you've done here. Do you feel like you're done? I mean, you're so young, so you can't be done. But
that's very kind of you.
Are
I
you
don't
already
feel like I'm
thinking?
done,
No.
I feel like there's so much still to do. It's only the tip of the iceberg, and I feel like the house deserves it.
Right.
And, we'll just continue doing what we can do.
Yeah.
And hopefully hand it on to our son in a relatively good state.
Yeah. Well, you already are doing that. I mean, it's obvious. You can see it here. I mean, it's wonderful. I'm going to take lots of inspiration back
thank you.
to Mapperton.
How historic houses are lived in has changed dramatically since the early 20th century. But guests to Somerleyton are given a glimpse of the Downton Abbey days during their stay.
Hello, Peter. I was told to find you in here. I'm Julie.
Hi, I'm Peter. I've just finished. Well, good timing. How are you? Okay.
Good. I'm
Nice
really
to
well.
meet you. Yeah.
Thank you for taking some time out of your day here.
You're welcome. Yes.
But I am intrigued. I don't want to overwhelm you with the amount of questions that I have, but I have quite a few because I'm intrigued. Because am I right in saying that you're sort of like a Carson from Downton Abbey?
Absolutely. I'd probably say that if it's not too vain to say.
No.
So anything to do with the household, running the household, any of the events, any of the guests arriving, will actually all fall onto myself, and then it will be disseminated around the team. Wow. So definitely that's that Mr. Carson image.
Oh my
Absolutely.
goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever, when somebody's arrived or a group has arrived and they're staying here, have you ever sort of lined up like they do in Downton Abbey?
Absolutely.
No,
yeah,
I thought you were going to say no there.
No,
Do you really?
Absolutely. So actually only recently we had some visitors and there was 10 of us. There would be myself as the head lead, and then it will follow down with other butlers that would be here, through to the housekeeping team, through to the catering team, and we would literally be in a row. So as the guests arrive, they would get that amazing impact. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So it does really exist.
It really does happen, and some people really love that.
Yes,
the formality of a stately home, especially this stately home is beautiful because it's privately owned as well, and so it just lends itself to that formality.
Oh my goodness, what fun! So I know that Somerleyton it's available for sort of private hire, exclusive private hire, and that's when you come up on board with your team.
Yes.
And are Americans coming? That's, I guess, because
Yes.
you know, we love Downton Abbey, and we'd love something like this. Is that a lot of the clientele?
The American clientele particularly love the estate because apart from the inclusivity of it, you also the heritage and the history of the house. And Lord and Lady very much will meet the guests as well and welcome them to their home, which is lovely. So literally from the Downton Abbey side of it, you have that formality from the minute the people step in the door to formal dinner to music playing as they come down for pre-dinner cocktails, etc. in the main hall. It is exactly as you see on television. And other things, of course, like the crown. So we stripped the whole house. We had to bring everything from history-wise. Every little thing had to have its place. We had a Buckingham Palace historian come and check that everything was in place to make sure that when you're filming, everything you didn't have something modern in the corner that didn't fit or whatever. Yeah. So fantastic it was.
There was a Buckingham Palace expert that came in and did that.
Absolutely. He worked on behalf of the film company to make sure that before any shooting's done, he would sweep, it's called. He would sweep the room to make sure everything was in keeping as Sandringham.
So how many rooms in total did you have to strip out?
All of downstairs, the whole downstairs floor. Yeah. Even the library. So the library, all the furniture went, the carpet was bare. Absolutely
the books?
Bare. Yeah. Oh no, not the books. The books stayed.
Okay, phew.
But we did have to paint the library in keeping colour with Sandringham. So all the library around the top got repainted.
Right.
And then when they left, a few weeks afterwards, when we emptied all of the cast furniture out, if you like, we repainted to our colour to put it all back again.
To the lovely teal colour.
Which you see now.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it was incredible. It really was.
How fun. Oh my goodness. I feel like I've met a real life Carson, and I have, haven't I?
If I can live up to him.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you, Peter, so much.
Hugh and Laura have reimagined Somerleyton Hall for life in the 21st century and beyond.
When you married, what year was that?
2009.
I love asking that question.
2009.
Love it. Because, it's do maths. 2009, you come in here and you think, right, I mean, it's vast and there's constant work. Did you have a priority list? Did you have an idea of what
I think for me, the priority was the kitchen because, very much unlike Hugh's, parents or, his grandparents, they didn't really use the kitchen like we do now.
Right.
Because they had people that would cook for them, for example. And obviously now that we just don't live like that. So that was the biggest thing for us, was creating a kitchen that was the real heartbeat of the house, which is what we've done. And that was that took quite a long time, didn't it? It was about 7 years it took us to get planning permission and then to get the design.
It involved quite a lot of demolition, and as you know, the principle is to not demolish, even if it's not particularly nice. So it took a while.
And you got that planning permission?
Yeah, we did.
Because of course, with the listed house,
10 years ago,
it's difficult.
Yeah, so we demolished some pretty nasty extensions.
Okay.
That had been added on what would be the servants' sort of wing of the house.
Right.
And so essentially we would bring it back to its original facade, and so it looks so beautiful now.
Right.
Whereas before it was just add-ons and outbuildings and so on. And we both had the same vision. We wanted to bring it back to the original facade and have these beautiful doors, which we copied the doors in various other rooms, out onto a terrace.
Right.
So we get a beautiful kitchen, but also a very nice private terrace.
Yes.
Which is an incredible luxury when your garden is open to the public. So we...
Right.
Well, it's a necessity, in fact.
Yeah, it's a necessity.
When your garden's open.
Yeah,
but because as much as we have, of course, we're spoiled on the one hand. We have these absolutely extraordinary gardens, but...
We're sharing them.
We're sharing them.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's nice to have just a tiny little area that's private, which is great. And we have that, so.
Absolutely. Okay, so if I'm doing the maths right, married 2009, kitchen takes around 7 years?
Well, it basically was...
Yeah,
so I was
10 years ago.
With Margot, yeah.
10
years ago, yeah.
Okay. Right, so that took, you get that done. So that's project one for the family that's going to live in a house that's open to the public, not only in the house, but the wider estate. You know, we have to create with almost like a mini apartment within the house.
Yeah, we did do, I mean, as you know, a historical kind of survey to prioritise kind of the fabric work, as in, you know, stonework, roof. But to be fair, Dad had done quite a lot, and there had been some good grants in the 90s, so he'd done quite a lot of the stone fabric. The kind of Achilles heel of the house is the stone, which is floated from Caen in France, but vast expense, no doubt, but is very easy to carve. It's John Thomas, who is employed by Peter as kind of the sculptor architect, which is quite almost a talking point in its own right, but it's beautiful to carve. So it's the same seam as stone as Portland, but it comes up in France as a yellower and softer version. But therefore it's also very soft, and so it's always crumbling away.
Yeah.
Right.
It doesn't like salinity, it doesn't like hard weather. So it's not ideal. But internally, I think also, I mean, Mum and Dad, I mean, and that generation, they just were different. You know, they were kind of end of war, quite mend and make do. But if they were here, I would say it to them. But what money they had was spent externally. I mean, as in they were in London, they were still the sort of the season to a degree, at least when they were young, and they kept horses and they hunted. And, I mean, those things appear extravagant to us now, but Mum definitely saw us as extravagant, spending money on the internal fabric, which was the bit they just didn't, and you know, none of them did. I mean, none of these houses I remember going to, they were all delightfully threadbare, really, and never had ensuite bathrooms or anything like that. That's the big phase.
But they said they rather enjoyed sort of bumping into each other in the corridor in their towels.
Yeah, brought a frisson of excitement.
Whereas now, people just expect to have an ensuite.
They do expect to have an ensuite.
I mean, the top floor was kind of, in my childhood, was sort of sealed off from a heating point of view, but was just a kind of, almost like a playground of, there was a bit of furniture stored, and old wallpaper from when they were servant rooms, but otherwise kind of abandoned. So bringing that up to a modern standard was kind of the first thing, and that, as you know, we're still doing that. So the bedrooms we go into now, thinking, love to go in there and do something, but where we haven't.
Evolving. But that's part of the excitement of living somewhere like this.
Yeah.
It'll never be finished.
No, in our lifetime. No. We'll have to pass it to the next generation, and they can either...
But there are just certain things that we can be proud of and say that we've done, you know. That
I mean, you've done quite a lot. I mean, not only, of course, with the interiors, and we looked at the beautiful oak parlour.
Yeah.
And different sort of the paint colors that you've chosen are exquisite. But looking at the internal, but then of course there's the exterior, because most of these historic houses come with land, and the public's coming into that, and they're expected to see a lovely garden. And that's what people come to see, don't they, when they come to Somerleyton?
Yeah, so actually the garden was kind of, you know, in a weird way, kind of reflected slightly the house, as in, I think Mum and Dad were quite interested, but they certainly didn't employ a garden designer. And again, that whole industry, if you think of Chelsea and all the great houses have done things with all these great gardeners. And it wasn't that, you know, they may have been formally laid out one day, but it wasn't particularly vogue in the sort of 60s, for example, 70s, into the 80s. So we employed George Carter, who is garden historian alongside being a garden designer.
Right.
And my real interest, I mean, I'm, you know, not academic, but I'm a historian, was interested in the history of the garden, particularly the 17th century and how the 19th century kind of overlaid it, and who had borrowed what from whom, to inform the future we wanted to kind of create in the garden.
So let's move into, again, the rewilding project, because we're in a similar boat. We started, I think, our rewilding project over lockdown. That's when we decided to really shift things. And it's about nature recovery for us in particular. And I did have a little look through a pamphlet where you mentioned the animals. So I'd love to compare the animals you have with the animals we have. Do you have beavers?
No.
Not yet.
No, we haven't been allowed beavers yet. I mean, because it's all the water around here, like Fritton Lake, which is part of us, but it's sort of essentially part of the Broads landscape, is fundamentally reclaimed and is below sea level.
Right.
And I think it's not so much now anyone really worrying about what they do. We know what they do, but it's more who's responsible. In the unlikely event they go through
beaver,
the river
beaver,
wall.
beaver on the
And if they go through the river wall, you've got 50,000 at least acres of the Waveney Valley and more, all the way up to Yarmouth, technically underwater. So I can see why there's a worry, but we know that they won't leave somewhere like Frindon Lake because habitually there's science to prove that if they've got what they want, they don't travel.
And we've had a baby white stork.
Oh, that's incredible.
Our first one.
Wow.
Yeah, it's got a long wait because I think they've been. Oh no, last year was the first year they could have bred. So I was hoping that they might both. We got 2 pairs, and they're in a big aviary, which is nice. And otherwise, in the wild block, really, it's ponies, pigs, and
You've got
cattle.
Exmoor ponies.
Yeah.
Pigs. Do you have pigs?
We have large black pigs.
Okay.
And I think.
Yeah, that's exactly what we have.
Did you get
what
them?
about those little Tamworths?
Yeah,
well, no, we haven't got any
did
Tamworths. Lara got me large blacks.
As a Christmas present?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they're really beautiful pigs.
Yeah,
I
the
love them.
black pigs are beautiful.
You know, the 2 original sows that we've got in the park right now are absolutely enormous. I mean, they're just the most extraordinary.
And they're quite sort of elephantine in a way, aren't they, with their tails and their ears.
So you've got the rootling, you've got the browsing, and then what cattle do you have for grazing?
Well, we went for Highlands partly because, we used to have them here when I was young.
Right.
We'd like some more goats, I think.
But you offer safaris, is that right? Because that's something that Luke and I have just started to do as well.
Yeah, I mean, so if you take Knepp as a sort of ultimate example where they've built tourism around wilding, we've sort of built wilding around tourism. So the tourism model of Frindon Lake has shifted a lot, and again through that same time period to being a club, and it's sort of slightly appealing to a different audience, and that audience are quite keen. I have to say, I'm quite relieved that let's say somewhere between 5 and 10% of people who come and visit or our members want to go, and that is enough. Partly because you don't really want to be doing it all the time,
right?
But also, because the tourism is a fairly mature offering. There's tennis and wild swimming and a whole range of other stuff. So it's one of many offerings rather than the offering.
But I think that this is really interesting, this idea of safaris, though, and the education around that. You know, we go all the way to Africa to go on these safaris to see the giraffes and the lions. But people can come here and come on safari and learn about the browsing and why it's important for the Exmoor ponies and the cattle for the grazing. And we've got White Park cattle. They're clever grazers, but why is that? And then the Tamworth pigs, and why is it important that they're rootling? And being able to educate sort of a generation 2 or 3 below.
Sure, and absolutely the local schools, etc. I mean, we're very keen for them to come.
Yeah.
I think the other thing for me, in terms of that channeling that feckless environmentalism that my dad used to talk about, and the phrase that I really use when I'm talking to people is and by the way, that's not to judge Dad and his generation, but we all have a societal debt to nature. Our farming systems, our food systems have been, fantastically successful, but also hugely destructive. We're only really learning that.
Yeah, at a cost.
Well, a few people have been talking about it for a while, but we are learning it as a whole society now, and we've got to reverse the trend hard and fast. And anything, therefore, we're doing. But so when I think of the in-hand land and think of essentially a fifth is rewilded. I mean, it's not the only bit that's farmed sensitively, because we're into all the other stuff too. But that is, that feels like a good debt. It's a debt, really. That's the way I see it. But then commercially, I think the other thing I'm the first to admit also is, I am extremely lucky, we are extremely lucky that the poorest land, farmland, not only a lake, which is a reservoir, and important in that respect, and therefore chemicals and all that, but also it's where our core tourism asset is.
Right.
If it was sort of, over there on the other side of the farm in the middle of nowhere, great.
It lends itself to safari.
It's extremely lucky.
Yeah. And to tourism, and it's, it's, as you mentioned, it's about striking that balance. It's not saying, I'm going to wipe out food production on the estate that I have. It's finding the balance. I'm going to do a bit of food production here, farming, on the land for us in particular that is arable. But for us, where we've got marginal farmland, it made absolute sense for us to do the rewilding. And I think it's striking that balance. And also it's educating, I think, an older generation in particular on that balance, because of course they're all coming out of the war, and it's all about food production and rationing and food production and where are we going to get our food. that you can do both.
Yeah.
But let me then just touch on also just the tourism that you've created at Fritton Lake, which I'm lucky enough to stay at right now. And it's an amazing place to come in. It's everything is outdoors. You can eat outdoors, you play tennis, you can go wild swimming, you can do laps in the pool, you can have, you've got petang, you've got the floating sauna, you have, beach volleyball, almost like a beach. So it's getting people outdoors, immersing them in outdoors, but at the same time having the amenities that they want. A comfortable, lovely bedroom. There's a bar down there, so at night I can get my pint, which is a very English thing to do. So you've been able to, I think, very much combine something that somebody like me would want to come in, experience nature and the sweet smell in particular in the summer. But at night I want to pull a pint.
Sure.
And
absolutely.
or
I
a glass
feel like
of rosé.
also the lake for me is almost quite American in that, a lot of
it is.
I mean, and I've definitely stolen ideas from those wonderful, summer camps.
Well,
that's what I grew up in.
What's
when
the
I
film?
well, Dirty Dancing when they were at Kellerman's.
Yeah.
The Kellerman's.
Kellerman's is always in the back of my mind.
I mean, when
I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not.
No, when I first saw the lake,
Kellerman's.
it literally reminded me of my summer holidays. We went to a lake every single summer. I literally looked at that and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
it's Lake Geneva in Wisconsin, not in Switzerland.
No.
It's
again, like you said, we're very lucky to have the lake because it is an amazing asset as far as tourism is concerned, because you just want to give people as many things to do when they're on a break or on a holiday, keep the children entertained, but like you say, be outside, not on a device.
Exactly.
Reconnect with the natural world. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And also what's great is because it's a club, everyone's got this sort of shared interest. For those who are members who come regularly, and then when you're on holiday there, you become a member for that duration of your stay.
Right.
And it's great. And it's a lovely place to go and just meet people if you want to sit at the bar and pull a pint, like you say.
Yeah.
In the evening. So I feel passionate about it.
Yeah, and I think it's just incredibly pioneering and genius because you've really taken, I think, your ideas and implemented them in such a genius and different way, because of course the easy path to take is the one that we've all been taking: weddings, events, open up the house and the gardens to the public. But we do need to, as the next generation, we need to evolve from that, because we've got to keep changing and
adapting.
Adapting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So
with the change, and so the footfall obviously was dropping off anyway before COVID here.
Well,
so
cheap flight's really the big change.
We did have to think about how we were going to evolve.
Yeah.
The way we made the estate work for itself.
Since the 17th century, the stunning gardens at Somerleyton have drawn gasps of delight from visitors. Set in 12 acres and revived under Hugh and Laura's custodianship, I was keen to meet with the head gardener, Simon Gash, to hear how the gardens are being updated.
Simon, of course, all historic houses, well, the large majority of them have formal gardens usually attached to them. And it's lovely. It's fantastic that this used to be the entrance, is that right? I guess the formal entrance.
That's right. So the long Lime Avenue opposite, that was the driveway in.
Oh my gosh,
So that's dating back from the 1700s.
Right.
Came through here, there was buildings on here, and this was a courtyard.
Right.
So this actually was the front of the hall.
This was at the front of the hall. I see. It came through there, and then they would go into this big grand entrance. Oh my goodness. Now you as head gardener, you not only have this room here, but you have the walled garden. And then there was the maze, and
we have the arboretum.
And you have the arboretum.
You had the kitchen garden.
Right, and oh my goodness.
And then we have a rose garden.
Right.
And various other little areas which we're reimagining, if you like,
okay,
to add more interest for visitors when they come.
Fantastic. And how big is your team?
We've just gone to 4 gardeners.
Okay.
So
wow. Right.
It's quite a challenge for 12 acres, especially with the weather we've had this year, all the rain. And
yeah, no. It's been I know quite a bit of an upkeep, especially with the rain in particular. I also wanted to just ask you about just your time here. How long have you been here?
So I've been here 5 years now.
Right.
My role coming here was to reinvigorate the areas which were falling behind, perhaps, if you like.
Right.
And weren't up to the standards of, say, the West Front here.
Yeah.
So that's what we've been doing over the last 5 years.
Yeah, and are you pleased?
Yes, I am, actually, because I only have to talk to the visitors and they've who have been here over the years, and the general feedback from them is it's just wonderful. There's so much to see, and compared to what it used to be.
Yeah, and especially, you know, I obviously was wandering around through the walled garden in particular, but the lovely Victorian greenhouses, I think they're so beautiful, and of course that's where they used to grow, you know, exotic fruit and all of that. And is there a plan to do something a little bit more with them, do you think, in future?
Yes, so we're in the middle of a grant application.
Okay.
To basically bring them back to their former glory.
Okay.
So the peach cases, for example, at the entrance of the walled garden, they're the only other surviving peach cases at Chatsworth Hall. So they're really quite unusual.
Yes.
And we still use them as peach cases. We grow peaches, nectarines inside them.
Incredible.
And then as you go in, you've got obviously the other ridge and furrow glass houses, and they're really fascinating actually, because they're the only surviving ridge and furrow glass houses on mainland UK.
You're kidding me.
So they're really, the technology from the Victorian technology that Paxton introduced was fascinating, really, and they're really good to get them going.
Yeah. So fingers crossed on that grant application. I know it takes some time, and then you'll bring it back to its formal glory. Is that your plan if the application proves successful?
That's the idea. So then we can showcase them to the public. The public can come and visit them. They can go inside and see them, and we can do guided tours of the Victorian glass houses, how they work, and get them to try out a crank handle and the windows, and then we'll do one as a sort of a workshop, so people can, like a museum area, so we can have before and after photos and things like that. So it's really quite exciting.
Yeah, no. Well, fingers crossed on that. And then the maze. Tell me a little bit about the maze. It's a wonderful, I guess, experience to have within the grounds. It's fun. They're fun.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the one place we have school children groups come and get lost in the maze.
Right.
It was designed by Nesfield back in the 1840s, 1850s. Planted in yew hedging.
Yes.
And it's been part of the gardens for over 150 years.
Incredible. And then lastly, what is your favorite part of the garden that you just feel is just so unique or magical, or you just love, you know, just sort of staring at it?
Well, that's difficult because every bit is good in its own way at a certain time of year. So in the spring, the wall garden, spring and early summer, the wall garden's looking great because we've got the alliums out, the herbaceous perennials, the hostas. We've got the kitchen garden in summer when everything's coming into flower and fruit. We've got the jungle garden when that's coming out, and the gingers and bananas in September.
Amazing.
We've got the rose garden at the end of June when that's over 1,000 roses in there.
Wow.
So every area has its own interest, and then all year round you've got the West Front, and that's the beauty of the building, and the arboretum with all the trees. So it's actually the garden. The garden is my favourite bit.
It's hard to choose. Obviously, it's hard to choose. And for the future, do you have any plans?
Well, I like to think that I'm carrying on the work of the Victorians, who had a lot of big plant collectors, by increasing all our range of interesting trees, shrubs, whatever. So we become more botanically interesting.
Yes.
So, and that's what they would have done if they were still around. So I'm carrying on that vein because we don't have a set plan of what used to be here. There's no sort of historical records of this border was growing this plant or that, etc. So therefore, it's our own interpretation.
Yes.
Working around the design of the 1850s.
Yeah. How wonderful! How fun, though.
Definitely.
I mean, really, really fun. Thank you, Simon. It's always wonderful to meet the head gardener. I feel very honored.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
So much knowledge. One day I'm going to get a green thumb. Not today, but soon.
Oh, good. Lovely. Nice to meet you.
The view from the formal gardens leads out into the rewilding project. On such a glorious summer's day, I took Hugh up on his offer to head out on safari and to meet Rob Raven, farm manager of the estate.
So this is the 5th year of no intervention. It hasn't been sprayed for about nearly 20 years, but we were still cutting, and that abrasive cutting, destroys or damages the last little bit, the molehills, the ant hills, and all that sort of stuff.
Oh my gosh, storks.
Just a quick, now the pair on the right, okay, so the young one, in fact, is somewhere in the long grass. That's a bit annoying.
So which one? Okay.
So these pair on the left haven't yet bred. They've laid eggs, but they haven't, unfortunately, hatched.
You created this pen, yes.
Yeah, we built this, and it's probably just about big enough. And actually, this year, this pair just had one chick only.
Right.
So that's great. But the idea is to build up a bit of a colony in there, and then allow some
release.
of them out.
Okay.
Maybe to the big seed, and they might use the big seedies behind us.
Can I ask also, how's the deer? Do you need to cull or not?
There's always been a need to control the deer on the estate, mostly from a forestry regeneration point of view.
Yeah, of course.
But we keep a good population here. We have
you
reds.
do?
Yeah, we have most of the reds in the area are here.
Right.
I think because we're more deer friendly than most estates, they tend to come here and stay here.
Right.
And so that means we get an ever increasing number if we're not careful.
Right.
It's taken the park a couple of years to get going, really, to get the growth away from that sort of mown surface into a more diverse tussocky structure.
Yeah.
And that immediately brought some wildlife benefits. We started to get voles come back in living in the tussocks, and then the barn owls came back because there were voles here. And now it's getting rough enough, and we have to let it grow more than we can graze, so that there's some ungrazed areas each year where the little scrubby bits begin to take hold.
Yes.
So now we're starting to see thorn and bramble come back, whereas if you mow it every year, whatever comes, guaranteed gone. So you never get that. You never get past stage one of succession.
Absolutely.
We're now getting sort of well into it. But this year's been great actually, because we had 2 dry springs in a row, which meant that we didn't get much growth. It sort of went brown in the summer, and then sort of that's it for the year. But this year we've had endless rain, as I'm sure you're aware, and and so we've got we've had 5 times the growth.
I think the thing that is really interesting is when you read about I'm talking about a 19th century park here, but with the beginning of the Industrial Revolution as well in the background, is these parks were really created and documented as sort of wildernesses. They were created as a piece of nature around a formal setting. And so arguably it looks more like it was meant to look now than it has done in any time since.
So they didn't have all the machinery.
No, but they had sheep, obviously, so sheep would make a different impact. But we will have sheep or goats back in, but we're waiting to get more scrub before we do that ourselves.
You will put sheep back in. Oh my gosh, there's your black pig.
Yeah, so this is
brilliant.
Rosita. Oh no, wait, it's Kitty in fact. But
so are they as friendly as Tamworth?
Yeah, they're pretty friendly. Obviously because they don't see it directly, you have to kind of approach with caution because
fine.
But these are the 2 that Laura was telling you about, the gift.
Yeah.
So they bred the ones that are in the wild block, but they've kind of retired to the park. And she's had a good time in the pond over there.
Look at those ears.
She's sort of 7 now, 7.
Yeah, must be.
Because before.
How many?
What?
How many sows do you have?
Well, so we've got 4 in the wild. We keep 4 breeding sows in the wild block, and then these 2 are just retired. They're not breeding anymore, but they're just retired here. But they were kind of pets,
right?
So we can't kind of take them.
I'll let Luke know. I really wanted to keep it. Oh my gosh.
But her sister is like twice the size of her. I don't know quite how that happened, but they're very happy. And you forget, of course, no one thinks. I didn't know until 7 years ago that pigs were grazers. Fundamentally happy on grass, and obviously they like noodling and they like other stuff as well. They're like us, but they through the summer pretty happy grazing.
Yeah. No, exactly. Brilliant. Okay, Hugh, you might need to let me out. Unless I can... Oh, there we go. Oh, I could have done it myself, but thanks. Okay, wow. So tell me a little bit about where we are right now with it, and sort of, a little bit about the rewilding project, but of course I saw a combine over there.
Actually it's a good place to start because of the As you say, there's a combine just over there. But so where we are, just behind me, is Fritton Lake, which is where our kind of tourism business is.
Yep, where I've been staying. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great.
And around it, by chance, and in a way our good fortune, is some of our poorest farmland. There was only converted from heathland, which is a kind of grazing system, in the 1930s, 1950s, as chemicals and irrigation really became more kind of normal. And so, but now as we look towards a different future where we're farming fundamentally nature as well as food, rewilding is kind of part of the answer for us. And so, you know, actually it was quite nice to see us farming food in juxtaposition literally with farming nature right here. And I guess I'm sort of in charge of farming nature, and Rob is in charge of farming food, which we're also doing in a more ecologically sensitive way. So it's a really nice package. It's a bit of the business I now enjoy the most, in fact.
But it's finding that right balance, isn't it? So it's not saying, right, so I have this, you know, large estate and I'm just going to rewild everything because that's the nouveau thing to do. Of course that we have to have the food production, but in farming in a sensitive and I think correct way. That's why we've got the regen farming. But how did you make that decision? I mean, were you thinking quite hard about what to do with these 1,000 acres?
Yes, I think so. There was a study, a worldwide study, of which Cambridge University contributed to around the time that I was getting involved with this sector, which was really studying what is the nature need in our kind of essentially human globe really now, from the polar caps in a sense right through the tropics, all the different landscape types, and 20% was kind of, you know, what they kept coming back to as the absolute minimum threshold. And so for Rob, you know, when I started working with Rob, we kind of, that was our yardstick. We thought, okay, well, we've got, you know, it's a 5,000 acre block. It's not all farmland, but we want to return 20% to a natural state. Most of that is around here because it makes sense for it to be a big block.
Yes.
But also, actually, we're doing it within the arable farm as well.
What were these fields prior to what I'm seeing today?
Well, I mean, this potatoes, cereals, you know, you name it. It's very light, sandy land.
Yeah.
What I've kind of learnt really from Rob is that, you know, sandy land is, I think I'm right in saying, is if you're looking at the sort of microbiology of soil, if you think of sand on a beach, there isn't any really.
Yep.
In the same way that there isn't any in absolutely solid clay. It's a land in the middle that we all get excited about. This is fundamentally sand. And so it's either nowadays rewilding, or a version of rewilding, and restoring heathland, I should say, or it's farming spuds. And actually, on that field, on another year, we would be farming spuds.
Right, okay.
So you're taking a high value crop, which is, you know, also feeds us.
Yes.
And here we're sacrificing it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally kind of. But I think the thing that's been really important for me, and the kind of marriage between us, is that's, I find the magic in this is that, you know, Rob comes from a commercial farming background, albeit a regenerative commercial farming background, and you know, with an eye on making a profit, if you like, and and proving how we can continue to do that. And as I said to my dad, maybe not quite a feckless environmentalist, but was sort of thinking anxiously about how I can just make it all as natural as possible, and wasn't really thinking too much about the profit. And the magic is it here, where we've got a very diverse farm, from marshes down on the river valley to some really strong land, which is great for, you know, kind of farming Rob does, to sand. You know, I think we've been talking a lot about regenerative, but also intensive.
Yes.
In the same conversation, which is kind of miles from where I was when we started. And Rob's dragged me there.
We really wanted to strike that balance between food production and habitat restoration, because you're right, it would have been easy to just rewild the whole thing.
Right.
And would have had great, you know, consequences for the environment. But really, anyone else in the world can say, well, it's fine for you to do that, but what are people going to eat?
Yes.
We really wanted to demonstrate a model where we can show that you can produce good food, you can do it profitably at the same time as restoring ecosystems and returning habitat, you know, to the farmed landscape. Because if we can do it here, then anyone can do it. It becomes a scalable model.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something we both would be really proud of, showing that it can be done. So that's why we have got this. Roughly 20% is in habitat restoration, alongside, you know, farming in a, yes, regenerative, but also commercial.
I think the other thing that's kind of really easy way into this conversation is that what I always say anyway is that the things that we most rely upon as humans, networks and a diversity in our lives that keeps us going, keeps everything interesting, is exactly what we deprive nature of in almost every way, in almost every place. And so this, and also the ecological regenerative farming, we've got a lot of what we call wild edges running through our farm network to connect this sort of place to the river or wherever it might be. It is just giving nature back some of the things that we actually thrive on, because they thrive on them too. It's really that simple. And what's magic for me is that rather than that being just a rather romantic vision, which is kind of where I started, is it's also a commercial one too. And
and I think that's right. I think it also has to be commercial.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean,
otherwise, it's preserve of those who can do it because they want to.
Because they want to. Yeah. No. I mean, we don't hold back. That we make it very well known that there is a commercial benefit to it as well, and there should be.
I mean, I think the other point I'd make, it's a sort of borrow from Rob, but it is correct to think a few years ago. People were saying, well, why would you do that? Why would you leave an edge to your field? And sort of scoffing slightly at me.
Yeah.
And having done the math, if you like, with Rob, and we have this thing we talk about of saving time, saving money, saving carbon, and saving nature. And if you think about those, all four are critical to a business. It's now really, when I talk to other farmers, and it doesn't matter how big or small they are, I'm talking about arable farmers.
Yes.
It's not really. I sort of used to suddenly slightly recoil from that criticism, and now it's really very much, well, why, you used to say to me, why would you do that? Well, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Because actually all of those things really count. I think the only real block to this process, anywhere, whether it's in the States or here, is culture, in fact. Once you've unlocked that idea that you could have an ecological corridor through a landscape of any size, then it becomes really obsessive and really interesting and rewarding. So
and actually, if you're the first one to do it, people will say, kind of pointless, and it is pointless if you're an island. You need to be connected. So we need that connectivity. So we want to contribute to being part of that, and more and more farms are embracing this.
Yeah, absolutely they are, and that's what's so exciting about it. I think more and more farms are looking at how they can also contribute to biodiversity or the health of the crop in a positive way, not in this intensive farming, and that's where good old regen comes in.
Yeah. So the last trick is getting the consumer to not just want this, but also to eat this, in the sense that you can't really. That's the one big thing for all of us, is that you can't continue to. You can't do ecological restoration on a kind of global scale without scaling back meat production and dairy production. That's the bit that the consumer's got to catch up with, and I think we, society, have got to. Whether you're a farmer or consumer, pay the price of our access, in a sense.
I did see 2 black pigs.
Yeah, they came and had a look, and then
they wander away. And I was trying to be. I was listening to you talk, and I thought,
that's why I could see you smiling.
Maybe they're going to come here, but they decided to
living in the landscape of fear.
Exactly. But wonderful to see this, and just to hear more about what you're both doing and how you can make it work. I think that's the most important message.
Well, if you want to see the spreadsheets to prove that it works, then
I believe
that's
you.
That's the bit that I feel pretty good about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm a believer. Luke and I we're in it as well, so which is very exciting.
What an absolutely wonderful visit to Somerleyton Hall. Hugh and Laura's energy and imaginative spirit is setting the course for the future of this historic estate. And before I left, I couldn't help but explore the stunning maze. Planted in 1846, it is one of the finest yew hedge mazes in Britain.